Chapter 238. That night, the day had already turned to ashes, and the night sky in the suburbs of Tokyo was as dark as a bottomless abyss, making people fearful. Because this was the wilderness highway leading to the northeast, there were not many lights along the road, and there were only a few houses as far as the eye could see. It was really a desolate place. Now, the surroundings were completely silent. Only the rumbling of the 3 cars' engines could be heard in the night wind, which made people uncomfortable. These were 3 black cars in a line, quickly driving toward the northeast of Tokyo. From the solemn atmosphere and the vigilant eyes of the driver, it could be seen that the people sitting in the car were definitely not ordinary people. In fact, this was indeed the case. At this time, sitting in the back seat of the black car in the middle was the contemporary Empress Wu-de, who had caused an uproar not long ago, Kohishenya. But now she had changed into a sportswear that was convenient for activities and very low-key, and used a hat and mask to cover her face, sitting in the car on the remote road heading northeast. Logically speaking, Kohishenya should still be in the Metropolitan Police Department, being investigated, and it was impossible for her to appear on this road in the middle of the night. However, if one looked back at the special detention center where she had been staying, it was not difficult to see that the dozens of police officers who were responsible for guarding inside had already fallen to the ground in disorder. One look and one would know what had happened just now. Prison break. On the night when Kohishenya was arrested and investigated, she arranged for people to escape without hesitation. A prison break team sent by the world's most famous American security company, Blackwater, who had participated in more than a dozen wars in the Middle East, and a top martial Dao master. In the world, there were very few prisons that could stop this group of people from taking Kohishenya away, not to mention it was just a special detention center under the Metropolitan Police Department. It was not much more difficult than going to the park. Phew. This is great. I can finally get rid of all those lousy things. At this moment, when Kohishenya sat in the car and rushed all the way to the northeast, she couldn't help but look at the cold scenery outside the window, but a relaxed expression flashed in her eyes. Under Ryuto and the colored glazes plan today, the current empress could be said to have lost all standing and reputation, and would never be able to make a comeback. Owada had indeed committed many crimes in the past. If the Metropolitan Police Department could dig out even a tenth of her crimes, she would be sentenced to life imprisonment at the very least. In the end, even if the royal family used all kinds of methods to protect the empress, the best result would be that she would be under house arrest in the imperial palace, and would not be able to take half a step out of the imperial palace until she died of old age. Therefore, Kawata, who was very clear about all this, decisively chose to break out of prison. She chose to abandon everything in the past and start over with a new identity. Although the identity of the empress brought a lot of convenience to Tianya, it also caused a lot of restrictions, especially in the mental aspect. After all, the current heavenly emperor Wu-de was a typical good-for-nothing in her eyes. He was not worthy of being her husband at all. As for the other members of the royal family, they were all a group of old antiques that should be thrown into the incinerator and burned to ashes. Living in the world was a waste of air. Staying in such a family for a long time made Tianya tired long ago. She even wanted to abandon this identity, abandon this name, and abandon everything in her past. Even if she abandoned this name and the identity of the empress, her shrewd mind was still there. Her knowledge of the various inside stories of this country was still there. She was still an excellent spy and a very valuable chess piece. Therefore, as long as she left this country and went to her second motherland, American, she could immediately change her appearance through plastic surgery and return to Japan with a new identity to redeploy her career. Of course, with Owada's current sensitive situation, it was not easy for her to escape Japan, but it was not difficult either. Misawa Base was one of the UA bases in Japan. It was located 640 kilometers northeast of Tokyo. There were all kinds of American Air Force formations deployed there. As long as Owada could make it to the Misawa base, the staff in the base would use supersonic jets to send her to American overnight. At that time, it would be like a fish leaping through the vast sea and a bird flying through the vast sky. Ryuto Kiryu, the grudge between us is not over yet. Sooner or later, I will. Just as Owada looked at the night outside the window and thought about how to continue to deal with Ryuto, a long firework suddenly flew out from the top of a mountain not far away. Whoosh! The firework flew out in the night with a long tail of flame, and it flew toward the 3 cars driving along the suburban road. It perfectly predicted the distance and hit the first car in front of them. It was only when the projectile hit the first car in front of them that Xiao Hei and Tianya realized that it wasn't a firework. It was a deadly rocket. That's right, it was a rocket. In the darkness, the legendary rocket launcher assassination technique appeared again. But this time, the person who used this forbidden assassination technique was not an Amon, but the dragon of the extreme, Ryuto Kiryu, that Owada was just thinking about. Boom! The 105mm rocket directly hit the first car in front of them. The body of the car was directly blown up, and a gorgeous firework exploded in front of Owada's eyes. The beauty of the firework was fleeting, but it left a deep impression on people. Because the distance between the 3 cars was less than 50 meters. When the first car was blasted into the sky, the violent impact and flames directly blew toward the second car, and the second car was also blasted into the air. Owada's body quickly rolled in the back seat, and along with the car, she rolled into a ditch on the side of the road. The firework really left an unforgettable impression on Owada. Tumble, tumble, tumble until the heavens and earth changed. Spin, spin, spin. She was dizzy. What's going on? When Owada woke up after a series of bumps and bumps, she only felt 2 strong hands dragging her out from a corner, and they were constantly whispering something in her ear. Big. You. Still. Her ears were buzzing, and the voice she heard was intermittent. The things in front of her were full of double images, and the things she saw were blurred. After a few seconds, Owada woke up under the constant slapping of her cheeks by Sai-tu. I was attacked. Rocket? Who did it? The Neon government? After she reacted, Owada turned her head and saw that the car she was in before was in a flipped position in the mud, and on the road not far away, she could see a blazing fire. The fire illuminated the originally gray night, and it also added a bit of bleak murderous intent to this dark night. Da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da. What was even more exaggerated was that the sound of gunfire could be clearly heard from the third car that had stopped nearly 100 meters away. Obviously, Owada's group was attacked by the enemy. The first car was directly hit by the rocket, and the 5 mercenaries in the car were all dead. The car behind seemed to be surrounded by the enemy at this time, and it was exchanging fire with the enemy that suddenly appeared. In the car where Owada was sitting, the 2 drivers and mercenaries in the front had already died in the flipped car, and the reason why she was fine was because of Tai-tu, who was sitting in the back seat with her. When the car began to roll, it was Tai-tu who used his body to protect his owner, preventing her from being fatally injured in the series of collisions. But at this moment, Tai-tu frowned and said, "Not good. We have been surrounded." As soon as his voice fell, dozens of figures in black special combat suits and armed with automatic rifles had already surrounded them. Judging from the movements of this group of special forces and their equipment, this group was obviously a group of professionals who had undergone professional training and were armed to the teeth. They moved in an orderly and silent manner, and they looked after each other, and there was absolutely no collapse in the formation. No matter which direction Tai-tu wanted to break through, he had to face the blockade of 5 or 6 special forces at the same time and the collective shooting of the other special forces. If it was inside a complex building, Tai-tu wouldn't pay attention to this group of guys. But in this open muddy ground, he didn't even have the chance to find cover, not to mention that he had a weak little Hatienya by his side. What should he do? Who is it? Who exactly were these special forces soldiers? Just as Xiao Hatien was gritting her teeth and thinking about who was playing tricks on her while thinking about how to escape, a figure carrying a huge rocket launcher walked over from behind the special forces. It was a handsome young man who looked to be at most 16 or 17 years old. He was wearing a handsome black suit, but the huge rocket launcher on his shoulder gave off a sense of tearing apart his attire and handsome appearance. After seeing the face that she would never forget in her dreams, Owada could only smile bitterly and said, "Tong Sheng. Ryuto, well done." That's right, it was naturally Ryuto. Other than him, who else could do such a thing? At this time, Ryuto was carrying the RPG-32 shoulder-fired individual anti-tank rocket launcher on his shoulder. This thing was as tall as a person, and the barrel was also astonishingly large. It was much more powerful than the individual portable rocket launcher used by the Amon clan. After all, this new rocket launcher produced by Mao Kuma was used to bomb tanks, and it was no different from blowing up bubbles when it hit a car. This was one of the weapons that Ryuto asked Kai Yong to find, and it was very useful in using the rocket launcher assassination technique. Owada, Sai 2. If you want to leave, you don't seem to have asked for my permission, right? Under the bright moonlight and the dazzling firelight, the overlord of Tokyo Kyoto showed a bloodthirsty smile. That smile in Owada's eyes. It was like the smile of a demon from hell. Chapter 239. In order to prevent Sai 2 from entering the Dao and Minato Masa from escaping, Ryudo put in a lot of effort. First, he had already mobilized the most elite brothers from the Rulong Security Company, which was the group of mercenaries that surrounded this area. These mercenaries were all veterans of the Rulong group, and each of them was a strong person who had climbed out of a pile of corpses. Gao Yuan also spent a lot of money to hire a few professional mercenary trainers from the Middle East. After such training, coupled with a system of individual combat equipment, the mercenaries were immediately exposed. In addition to mobilizing a large number of troops, Long Do also asked Mingji to make preparations in advance to infiltrate the detention center where Konoha and Tanya were being held. They could monitor the situation in the detention center at any time and accurately grasp the time when the other party would escape. Not only that, Sensible also intercepted the message sent by Seitu subordinates to the Misawa base American liaison. He learned that the woman was planning to escape to the Air Force base to take a plane out of the country. Now, the time, place, and people were all prepared. With such a perfect preparation, Sai 2, who knew nothing about it, was naturally doomed. In the dark night, the vehicle that was bombed by the rocket launcher was still burning. But even such a raging fire couldn't make the former Empress feel any better. I didn't expect this kid to go to this extent. It seems like this is the end. Sai 2 looked at the dozens of armed mercenaries surrounding her and Sai 2, and the seemingly omnipotent extreme Dao master in front of her. Sai 2 could not help but feel a little regretful. That's right, she regretted it. She really did regret it. If she knew that Ryuto was so strong in all aspects and would be so ruthless, she would not have provoked this guy for the time being. But it was too late to say anything now. The situation was already a dead end, and there was no turning back. Sai 2, go. You can still escape if you're alone. At the last moment, Sai 2, who knew that she was going to die, slowly said to Sai 2. With Ryuto's personality, there was no way he would let her go, and it was impossible for Sai 2 to escape with her. However, with the strength of someone who had entered the Dao, if he intended to escape alone, he might have had a chance to escape. He was going to die anyway, so why drag another person down with him? At this moment, that was what Xiao He and Tianya were thinking. However, entering Dao frowned and said seriously, I'm sorry, but I can't run away in front of this brat. For those who had stepped into the Dao, the most unbearable thing was not being ambushed or killed, but being forced to flee in a sorry state by this stinky brat that they hated the most. If he had to flee pathetically in front of Ryuto, he would rather die in battle. At the very least, he would not die in such a cowardly manner. Well said. Even in the face of death, you are still so courageous. However, Ryuto clapped his hands and smiled. But there's no need to rush into the matter of death for the time being, because you still have a chance to live. Oh, let's hear it. Kawata raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she wanted to know what Ryuto was trying to do. According to the old rules of Extreme Dao, 1-on-1. If you win, I will let you go. When he said 1-on-1, Ryuto looked straight at Sai 2, who was protecting his master behind him. His meaning was very obvious. This kind of good deal? The moment they heard Ryuto's words, both Kawata and entering Dao were stunned because this condition was too generous. Now that the two were ambushed, and there were dozens of automatic rifles pointing at them, there was no way they could escape. Even if a martial arts grandmaster who had entered the Dao had unparalleled divine skills, he would still die after being shot by dozens of automatic rifles, even if he had the Vajra Qigong. However, Long Do, who had the absolute advantage, had said that he would fight a Dao-reaching realm cultivator one-on-one, and that he would let them go if he won? This was no longer a pie in the sky, it was a King Manchu Han imperial feast. It was very difficult to escape from dozens of fully armed mercenaries, but to win against Ryuto, it was obviously much easier. "Are you serious?" Entering Dao swallowed his saliva and asked in an incredulous tone. "Don't worry, everyone here is my brothers. If I don't keep my word, will they be willing to follow me in the future?" Ryuto reached out and slowly took off his suit jacket, and signaled the Rulong Security Company mercenaries around him to back away a little, leaving the area in the middle empty. From the looks of it, Long Do really intended to fight to the death with the Dao-accessing cultivator. He wanted to fight bare-handed like a real man. After confirming that Ryuto was not joking, Entering Dao laughed. "Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha." Even in such a situation, his laughter was still full of boldness and wildness, making his originally incomparably short figure appear even taller under the illumination of the fire. After laughing enough, Entering Dao took a deep breath and shouted, "Good. Very good. Very good." In just 6 words, each word was as loud as a bell. It was as if the darkness of the night sky was about to shatter it. Rip. At the same time, a cracking sound came out from Entering Dao. His body rapidly inflated like an inflated doll, and the clothes on his body that were originally close to his body were forcibly torn apart, turning into strips of cloth that scattered on the ground. After the clothes were torn, Entering Dao's upper body was bare, revealing his body that seemed to be made of diamond. Compared to a normal human, Entering Dao's body was even a little deformed, especially the overly inflated but very tight muscles without any excess fat. It was not like a human's body at all. Even just by looking at it, it was not difficult to see the terrifying power in this body. Is this really a human? Seeing that the demon child was ready for battle, and slowly walked to the center of the field, in front of young Master Ryuto. Even the group of fully armed mercenaries with automatic rifles could not help but have the urge to turn around and run. It was terrifying. Sai-Tu Entering Dao was really terrifying. His aura was so powerful that even if they were equipped with very modern weapons, no mercenary felt that they could kill this man here. However, young Master Ryuto seemed to want to fight this man one-on-one? One-on-one with bare hands? Is that okay? Can young Master Ryuto win? Seeing that Ryuto also walked to the entrance, all the mercenaries of the Rulong Security Company could not help but sweat for him. When Ryuto stood in front of Entering Dao, the distance between the two was less than a meter. It was almost the kind of distance where people stood close to each other. Then, Ryuto did not make a move. Instead, he slowly asked, "Furamaki Sotaro, do you still remember this name?" Furamaki Sotaro? Entering Dao frowned slightly when he heard this. An old man with a goatee immediately appeared in his mind. He looked old but was very difficult to deal with when he entered battle mode. There is such a person. If I remember correctly, he should have been hit in the dantian by me. As a martial artist, his lifeline is broken. Humph. He is my master. Master? Entering Dao was stunned at first. Then he understood why Ryuto insisted on fighting him one-on-one. I see, you want to avenge your master? Why? Can't I? You can, but I'm afraid that you will walk the same path as your master, and your entire sect will be destroyed by my hands. At this point, Entering Dao's eyes flashed with a terrifying murderous light. Then, he made the first move at a speed that the human eye could not react to. He swung his right shoulder, and suddenly, his palm went straight through the enemy's chest. This palm seemed simple, but it was a real killer move. It contained the Vajrayana Mahamudra, a real martial art that could destroy gold and jade. Under normal circumstances, if this palm hit the chest, the victim would either die on the spot or suffer severe internal injuries. They would definitely not be able to fight anymore. However, under Entering Dao's shocked gaze, Ryuto did not even dodge. He had forcefully used his own chest to take this palm strike. This brat. What was he thinking? Before the palm hit, Entering Dao's mind was filled with 100 questions. However, after his palm hit Ryuto's chest, He understood that it was not that the young man did not dodge, but that he intended to take it head-on. Furamaki-style martial art. Profound meaning of the body, hard clash. The moment the palm hit the chest, Ryuto took a deep breath and exhaled. The muscles all over his body seemed to have twisted into a rope with his chest as the core, gathering all the strength in the area that was hit. Hard, very hard, very hard. The moment the palm landed, entering Dao felt as if his hand was not hitting a living body of flesh and blood, but a thick steel shield that even bullets could not penetrate. Just as entering Dao's palm landed and felt that something was wrong, Ryuto's body trembled slightly. The surging hidden force was accompanied by a terrifying recoil force. Profound meaning of the body, hard clash. A counterattack skill that contracted part of the muscles at the moment of the enemy's attack, turning the point of impact into a shield to destroy the opponent's fist. Such a tough skill combined with Ryuto's hidden force, level 4 constitution, and mastery of copper skin and iron bones, at 80% proficiency, the hardness of the skill was beyond human understanding. To exaggerate, if one wanted to penetrate Ryuto's chest with a normal submachine gun bullet, it would be asking for humiliation. At the very least, one would have to use armor-piercing bullets, which were specially used against armored vehicles. Boom! At the same time, the strong recoil force of hard clash was directly applied to entering Dao's wrist, almost breaking his entire wrist. Fortunately, at the last second before the palm hit, entering Dao still felt that something was wrong, so he retracted part of the force of his palm and was not shocked by this manly counterattack. Then, the demon child quickly flipped his body backward, spinning in the air like an acrobat, almost all of the recoil force of hard clash, and then landed steadily. However, such a hardcore battle was only the first round of the two's fight, nothing more. Chapter 240. Other than mastery of iron bone and mastery of copper skin, Ryuto's most proficient skills were Furamaki-style martial arts and ancient eight extremities fist. His proficiency in these two martial skills had already reached 60% respectively. Based on his previous experience, 20% proficiency of a skill was sufficient for actual combat, 40% proficiency of a skill was already quite proficient, and 60% proficiency of a skill was already at the level of a master. To train any one of these skills to the level of a master, it might take a warrior a lifetime of hard work, not to mention two of them. With such exquisite proficiency in martial arts, coupled with the ridiculous number of passive skills of the dragon fight, as well as a strong physical fitness and an opening rate of 41%, it created such a young grandmaster whose strength far exceeded that of ordinary people. However, although Ryuto was strong, his opponent, Saito, was also a master of his generation. Saito's proficiency and ki openness were even higher than Ryuto's. If not for the fact that Saito's physique was slightly weaker, the battle would not have ended like this. After being sent flying by Long Do's profound meaning of the body, hard clash, Dao accessing didn't feel any discomfort. Instead, after landing on the ground, his body flashed, and with his more agile movement, he quickly closed in on his enemy and launched another fierce attack. Bang! 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 In less than 10 seconds, a series of sounds that did not sound like human bodies colliding violently rang out. The two of them had already exchanged more than 10 rounds under the watchful eyes of Kawatamasa and a group of mercenaries. Sato's hard body skill was amazing, and with his qigong, it could be said that he had the body of a diamond. Therefore, each of his attacks had a domineering momentum that could crush metal and stone. But even so, Ryuto used various methods to block each of Sato's fierce attacks. On the other hand, Ryuto would usually try to counterattack immediately after receiving an attack. However, Access to Dao, who had already suffered a loss once, was not stupid enough to just stand there and let his opponent counterattack. Instead, he chose to attack with agility. His figure flashed past Ryuto like a rubber ball with 4 limbs. Every time he flashed past, there would be a violent collision. Then, the distance between the two of them would increase rapidly, and they would continue to collide for the second, third, and fourth time. In the eyes of ordinary people, the two of them were exchanging blows at an extremely fast speed. It was so fast that they couldn't even see what was happening. It was even hard to imagine that this was actually a battle between two living humans. Due to the speed at which he entered the Dao-reaching realm, they felt as if Ryuto was not fighting with someone who had entered the Tao-reaching realm. Instead, he was playing with a huge yo-yo. Every time the yo-yo crashed into Ryuto with the force of wind and thunder. After being blocked by Ryuto, the yo-yo would quickly bounce off and then crash into him again. At least from a third party's point of view, this was the current situation. However, no matter how nimble the movements of entering the Tao were, Ryuto still needed time to adapt. I see it. Just as Tao-reaching realm's fingers were about to pierce his neck like a sharp spear, Ryuto suddenly swung his left hand upwards and grabbed Tao-reaching realm's wrist at a strange angle. This hand, I want it. Then, Ryuto's arm suddenly rotated, and hidden force burst forth. He was actually about to break Tao-reaching realm's wrist. A grab and a twist. This was the unique technique of the third martial art that Ryuto had mastered, the bone dislocation dragon entanglement hand. However, Tao-reaching realm, whose wrist was grabbed, was not afraid at all. His body suddenly turned in midair, and he nimbly flipped and turned in the direction that Ryuto was twisting his wrist. This time, the joint technique missed. Don't forget that Tao-reaching realm's Vajra finger also had many superior grappling techniques. In this aspect, he was only better than Ryuto. Moreover, in terms of combat experience, the difference between the two of them was like heaven and earth. It was quite difficult to use joint techniques against Tao-reaching realm. For example, the last time when he entered the Tao in Between the Plum Blossoms, his wrist and elbow were broken cleanly. It was mainly because he did not expect that this brat Long Do had such an exquisite grappling technique, so he was careless for a moment. Now that he knew how many trump cards Ryuto had up his sleeves, Tao-reaching realm naturally had an easier time dealing with him. While he was tumbling in the air, Tao-reaching realm suddenly took a deep breath and kicked out with both legs at the same time, forcing Ryuto to retreat. When he landed, his abdomen had expanded greatly, and he looked like a giant toad. Hiss. Huh. The moment he landed on the ground, Tao-reaching realm's right hand formed the shape of a trumpet by his mouth. At the same time, he suddenly blew out a breath. Combined with the powerful Dan force, this breath of air was blown into a killing weapon like an invisible arrow. There were 3 levels of Qi: obvious force, hidden force, and Dan force. The so-called Dan force was actually a force that was released from the abdomen with the dantian as the core. The force of the whole body could be gathered at a single point. Only those who had successfully cultivated Dan force could achieve such a miraculous skill of exhaling Qi like an arrow. Oh, this is... Ryuto had never seen such a strange kung fu until now. He only felt a wave of Qi coming at him, and the surging Qi arrow blasted directly between his eyes. When the sharp Qi entered his eyes, Ryuto only felt a sharp pain in his eyes. His body unconsciously retreated. This retreat was what Tao-reaching realm wanted. He immediately tapped his legs on the ground, and his whole body bounced up from the ground like a rubber ball. He jumped more than 3 meters in the air and pressed down with his Qi. With the momentum of Mount Tai, he pressed down on Ryuto's head. With his eyes blocked, Ryuto could not dodge in time. He could only cross his arms over his head in the direction of the Qi pressure. Boom! When Tao-reaching realm's body pressed down on Ryuto's arms with the force of 1,000 pounds, the youth's feet were pressed down into the solid layer of soil. The surrounding soil even showed signs of cracking. One hit. With just one hit, Ryuto's lower thighs sank into the ground. This brought great inconvenience to his movements. Generally speaking, it was not very difficult for an expert like Ryuto to pull his body out of the ground. Unfortunately, Tao-reaching realm obviously did not intend to allow him to do so. After landing, Tao-reaching realm continued to charge towards Ryuto with the force of a cannonball. His thick and powerful hands were like 2 meat grinders, madly urging palm strikes, diamond finger, and other killing moves to greet Ryuto's upper body. From this moment on, the strong sound of wind breaking could be heard clearly in the air. The sweeping wind pressure even made Cohesion, who was dozens of meters away, unable to stand steadily. Did he win? Did he take him down? There was no way he could fight back now, right? Seeing Tao-reaching realm frantically attacking Ryuto, who was half buried in the ground, Cohesion nervously reached out and pinched the corner of her clothes. Her face was full of anticipation. Dao reaching Realm's series of attacks. Almost every strike was a fierce killing move. Palm shadows, finger shadows, and one after another explosions resounded through the night, making one's scalp tingle. Under the urging of Dan Force, Dao reaching Realm's strength seemed to be endless. After continuously attacking with over 100 palms, he still did not stop. He actually intended to beat Ryuto to death just like that. Even for Ryuto, who had an almost indestructible diamond body, this was a dangerous situation. His body was surrounded by palm shadows and finger shadows. Every palm was aimed at his Tianling acupoint, Taiyang acupoint, Shenting acupoint, and other vital points. Every finger wanted to poke a big hole in his throat or eye socket. The ferocity of the attacks made one feel like they were being sucked into a storm of death. Unknowingly, Ryuto had blocked and endured countless attacks. Although he relied on the copper skin and iron bones dual mastery and the profound meaning of the body hard block to offset most of the damage, the accumulated damage was not to be underestimated. As if he had taken too many hits, his right arm, which was always in front of him, unconsciously drooped down. A chance. Dao reaching Realm saw this scene and was suddenly overjoyed. His left hand struck Ryuto's head with all his strength. This time, Dao reaching Realm could be said to have used his entire life's worth of skills. He used obvious force, hidden force, and Dan force all at once. He also used all the martial arts skills he could think of. A one-hit kill. As long as this palm strike landed, Dao reaching Realm could guarantee that Ryuto would definitely die on the spot. Even if his skull was as thick as a steel plate, it would be useless. Perhaps because he had finally found a rare opportunity to kill, Dao reaching Realm's expression was obviously overjoyed. He did not pay attention to other places, such as Ryuto's drooping hand. If one looked closely, Ryuto's right hand was pretending to be weak and limp, but he quickly picked up a sharp stone from the ground. He pinched the stone between his thumb and middle finger and threw it forward. Thugs don't die by bare hands. Activate. At this time, Ryuto's proficiency in this skill had reached 60%. Coupled with his terrifying physical attributes, he had already reached the level where he could hurt people with flying flowers and falling leaves. Thus, the sharp stone pierced through the air and drew a sharp gust of wind, accurately hitting the bottom of the man's abdomen in front of him. About 4 fingers below the navel, the area located on the golden line of the human body, was a very important area for martial artists. The dantian. Even a top-notch expert like Dao reaching Realm would never let his opponent hit this area during a fight. This was because this was where the chi gate of the Dan force was located. Being hit by it would cause endless trouble. But just as Dao reaching Realm was excitedly preparing to launch the final blow on Ryuto, the stone that contained the power to pierce through steel accurately landed in the center of the demon child's dantian. The entire stone was embedded in it. Poof! In an instant, a huge force directly hit the wall of his abdomen. The chi that was originally condensed in his dantian was suddenly pierced. It was as if someone had used a sharp needle to puncture a balloon filled with air. At the same time, Dao reaching Realm's palm strike, which should have been fatal, landed on Ryuto's head. However, because the Dan force was broken, the power of this palm strike was greatly reduced. Although it made Ryuto dizzy, it was not fatal because he had used hard hit in advance. Dao reaching Realm. You are really a powerful opponent. But unfortunately, the winner of this battle is me. Just as Dao reaching Realm's dantian was inexplicably injured and his body stagnated, Ryuto's body quickly rose from the ground. He threw a punch in mid-air, directly hitting Dao reaching Realm's iron mask in the face. Bang! With a crisp sound, the iron mask covering the face of the demon child shattered, and the face inside that was beaten beyond recognition by this punch was also exposed to the air. When Ryuto slowly stood up, the group of Rulong Security Company mercenaries around him also cheered. Win! Win! Boss won! Ha 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 ha! Boss is mighty! Boss is majestic! Boss is so fierce! He really killed the old monster single-handedly. For a time, the group of mercenaries with automatic rifles in their hands began to cheer enthusiastically. The wilderness next to the road was full of lively air. It had to be said that after the battle just now, compared to Long Do, this group of brothers from Rulong Security Company were actually more nervous. Especially during the period when Ryuto was suppressed by Sai-Tu, this group of mercenaries couldn't wait to shoot the old monster directly in the back. But considering that doing so would actually discredit their boss, they could only obediently put away their guns and continue to watch in fear. However, the rule of this world was that if some people were happy, others would be sad. While the mercenaries here were shouting, "Boss is mighty," the woman who was pointed at with a gun had long been scared pale and scared out of her wits. No way. Did he really lose to Sai-Tu? Originally, when she knew that Ryuto was going to fight Sai-Tu one-on-one, Kawata had been secretly happy and thought that she would be able to survive this disaster. But when Sai-Tu fell to the ground and turned into a cold corpse, the last hope of the former queen also disappeared. Especially when she saw Ryuto's figure slowly walking over, Kawata couldn't help but tremble. The most terrible thing in this world was not falling into despair, but getting hope after falling into despair, and then falling into despair again. Since you're a lady, you can end it yourself. Ryuto came in front of the former queen, took a pistol from a mercenary next to him and threw it over. Kawata picked up the black pistol with trepidation. It was not the first time she touched a gun in her life, but it was the first time she felt that such a pistol was so heavy. She slowly pointed the muzzle of the pistol at her head, but her finger couldn't pull the trigger. It was as if the small trigger had 1,000 pounds of force. No, I can't die. How can I die here? If I think about it carefully, Ryuto won't gain anything by killing me, right? If I move him emotionally and add in some temptations of benefits, perhaps he will let me live? For Kawata, since she had been American's dog for so long, she didn't mind continuing to be someone else's dog, even if it was a 16-year-old boy's dog, as long as she could live. In this atmosphere of incomparable despair, Kawata, who was kneeling on the ground, couldn't help but look up at Ryuto and begged, "Ryuto-kun, if you are willing to let me go, I promise. Kocha." But just when the former queen wanted to fight for the last time, she found that her vision suddenly tilted 90 degrees, and at the same time, she heard the crisp sound of the neck breaking. Plop. Under the dark night, Kawata-ya's lifeless body fell to the ground. She didn't even realize how she died before she died. I gave you the last dignity, but you don't want it. Then I can only help you. After twisting the woman's neck, Ryuto stretched slightly and glanced at Kawata as if he was looking at an idiot. In this way, as the two main targets were dealt with, the ambush on the outskirts of Yoto tonight also came to an end. Next, this group of mercenaries from the Rulong Security Company would quickly dispose of the 3 cars, as well as the bodies of the group of people including Sai-Tu and Kawata, and clean up the scene as if nothing had happened. However, these things had nothing to do with Ryuto. He had already sat in his exclusive car, and under the direction of Narukai Otani, he drove in the direction of Yoto City Circle. That night, the Martial Dao Grandmaster and the Empress of a Generation disappeared from the world one after another. Not many people knew how they disappeared. However, just as the group of mercenaries was disposing of the cars in that area and preparing to sink the bodies inside with the cars to the bottom of the nearby river, a pair of eyes that were still sharp like an eagle in the night were watching their movements. It was a boy who looked at most 17 or 18 years old, but his body was as thin as 13 or 14 years old. After observing the situation here, the figure wearing a black tight suit, like a living ghost, unknowingly disappeared from where he was. No one knew when he came, and no one knew when he left. However, not long after, in the study room on the top floor of the unrestrained Sky Tower, a giant building located on the artificial island in the middle of Yoto Bay, this ghost-like figure knelt on the gorgeous carpet that was sprayed in a mess by someone. Ayam, Sama, Kawata and Sai-Tu Ruto have confirmed their deaths, and the whole process has been completely recorded. This Tenmu group, who was particularly good at night operations, secretly endured. The real snake took out a disc from his arms and respectfully handed it to the lady in front of him. And this woman with a peerless appearance, but her aura was as chaotic as the abyss. She stuffed the disc recorded by the real snake into the machine on the table and immediately watched it with relish. Ha 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 ha. It's actually a rocket launcher. But this firepower is a bit low. It should be an old model from more than 10 years ago. Oh. Does he plan to fight the old man one-on-one? Interesting. Good. We won. That was cool at the end, but unfortunately, his brain didn't explode. What? He doesn't even have the courage to commit suicide. What a useless person. In this strange-looking study room, the world's first queen, the founder, chairman, president, CEO, and UFO of the Tenmu Group, Tenmu Yuheim, who was known as the world's first queen, let out excited cries and messy complaints while watching the Dragon Fight vs entering the Tao drama of the century. Ha, not poked, not bad. It was like watching a movie. After watching the drama that happened not long ago, Yongji smiled and sat down on her massage chair. Her eyes were full of satisfaction, as if she had entered the sage mode. Ryuto Kiryu. I really didn't misjudge you, you're getting more and more interesting. In the middle of the night, Ayam, who was alone in the office, repeatedly thought about the domineering figure in the video. The more she thought about it, the more she felt the strong momentum that looked down on the world. As she thought about it, in the end, she even felt that some part of her body was a little wet. It should be her eyes that were a little wet, probably. However, it was a pity that I had long since decided not to follow the family tradition of finding someone to carry on the family line. Otherwise, Long Do would definitely be able to provide the Heavenly Eye clan with the best genes, and the child born would definitely be the strongest Heavenly Eye in history. When she thought about the scene in the video where the young and strong body was squeezed by her genes, Ayam couldn't help but laugh again. But don't worry, don't worry. There will be a lot of interaction between us in the future, and I'll slowly love you then, dear Ryuto-kun. After carefully storing the CD of Ryuto's heroic figure, Ayam leaned on the massage chair and slowly fell asleep. In the dream, she seemed to see ruins that were burned by a raging fire. Ayam walked alone in the ruins, as if she was an empress patrolling her own territory. Her nose was filled with the strong smell of burnt flesh and corpses. In front of her, other than the burnt corpses, there were only human ruins left. Destroy, destroy, destroy the insignificant human countries and human civilization, and build a world that belongs to us, the heavenly demons. This is the long-cherished wish of the Tenmu clan. It is also the meaning of your existence. Unknowingly, Ayam seemed to hear her father's roar. That hysterical, psychopathic voice had accompanied her throughout her childhood and growth, until the man was personally chopped into pieces by Ayam and fed to the dogs. Only then did it stop. Of course, Ayam had no interest in building a world for the heavenly demons. Although she kept expanding her influence according to the family tradition, and kept creating large numbers of massacres, it wasn't because she wanted to follow her father's words. She just wanted to have some fun, and live purely for her own interests. It was that simple. Thinking about this, Ayam, who was half awake, revealed a joyful smile, like a flower of extreme evil growing in a sea of blood. Chapter 242. Unknowingly, spring had gradually come to an end. The summer sun gradually shone on the earth, making people feel a blazing sense of youth. Why did he say that it was the heat of youth? Because although summer was hot, for boys in puberty, it was a good season to feast their eyes. Summer had arrived. The girls of Dori No. 1 High School had also changed out of their slightly stuffy long-sleeved school uniforms into more refreshing short-sleeved ones. The length of their skirts had also been significantly reduced. Nice. There shouldn't be any boys who didn't care about the girls' underwear that was faintly discernible under the thin summer uniform. Especially the texture of the clothes sticking to the skin after sweating, it was simply irresistible. Oh, and the scenery under the short skirt. Who could resist the beautiful posture of a pair of straight and slender legs swinging while walking? If there is, then stand out, bastard. There were also the ankles, the armpits, the back of the neck, and the collarbone. When summer was mentioned, there were too many things to talk about. It would take 3 days and 3 nights to talk about all of them. What? What did this have to do with summer? What a joke. These were the things that boys in puberty liked the most. What? You said that boys in puberty weren't the same as perverts? What a joke. What's the difference? What's wrong with boys being perverts? But in reality, at least for Ryuto, these two words didn't seem to have any difference. This was because early in the morning, there was a young girl in front of him who was drenched in sweat. Her hair was sticky and stuck to her slender white neck, and she was constantly gasping for breath. The location was the bamboo forest outside Ryuto's bedroom. Early summer was the time when the bamboo was dense. Pieces of green bamboo leaves swayed with the wind. But even so, it was difficult to hide the two figures in the middle of the bamboo forest. Are you done? I'm almost done. At this moment, the two hands were tightly clasped together, and the girl with white hair couldn't help but ask the person behind her. It's about time. Hold on a little longer. This position is more difficult, but it will be comfortable after you get used to it. Ryuto, who was standing behind, held the girl's hand from behind while comforting her. Ugh. After what seemed like a century to the young girl, Ryuto's movements finally stopped, and the young girl fell to the ground weakly, gasping for breath. Why is this release of chi so tiring? It's even more tiring than usual. After taking a few deep breaths, the white-haired girl Dunya finally caught her breath. At the same time, she felt hot and sticky all over, as if she had just finished soaking in a hot spring. That's right. The reason why Dunya was in the headquarters of the Rulon group early in the morning and stayed in the bamboo forest with Ryuto was that they were going through the opening of ki. According to old Master Furamaki, the easiest way to open up chi was to directly stimulate all the acupoints in the body. Previously, Ryuto had been taught how to do it by old Master Furamaki after being electrocuted. Naturally, when Dunya learned about the magical power of ki, she also asked Ryuto to help her open up. Seeing that she had a delicate body, my ass, Ryuto didn't choose to use acupuncture and electricity to stimulate the girl. Instead, he used his own ki to open up all the acupoints in Dunya's body to help her open up chi. Therefore, early in the morning, Ryuto reached out to hold Dunya's hand, and let her maintain a posture that was similar to bending over, with her back leaning against his body, so that the hidden force could smoothly spread throughout the girl's body. So, that's what happened just now. Did anyone think the wrong thing? No way. Call the police. Tired? What's this bit of tiredness? I'm the one who's tired. If I knew earlier, I would have directly electrocuted you, and also electrocuted your hair. I don't want to. My hair is so straight, if it's bent, you'll pay for it. Then don't be so long-winded, quickly go take a shower and change your clothes, and prepare to go to school. Seeing that it was almost 7 in the morning, Ryuto picked up the soft Dunya from the ground, and then carried her on his shoulder like a straight man carrying a sandbag, and valiantly walked towards the room. It has to be said, the way Ryuto carried Dunya out was like a kidnapper carrying a hostage after a successful kidnapping. Although the two of them did have the relationship of kidnapper and hostage. But towards this strange relationship and strange way of getting along, Dunya was already used to it in these 2 months. Therefore, she was like a salted fish lying on Ryuto's shoulder, allowing this guy to carry her everywhere. That's right, it had already been 2 months since the royal family courting disaster incident. At that time, after Ryuto killed Kawada and Saito, he returned to his daily life. Every day, he went to school, went on dates with Yunyen, cooperated with Colored Glaze to manage the alliance, and fought with Dunya. Maybe it was a blessing from the heavens. These 2 months passed very peacefully. There were no crazy people causing trouble, and everything was in a state of steady development. And during this time, the relationship between Ryuto and Dunya also developed by leaps and bounds. But compared to the relationship with Yunyen and Colored Glaze, the relationship between these two seemed like the worst friend? Perhaps it was because Dunya was falling more and more into the bottomless abyss of fighting craze. She came to find Ryuto more often than Colored Glaze and Yunyen combined. Almost every day at around 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, Miss Saito would wear sportswear and run from her home to the Rulon Group headquarters, then rush into Ryuto's room to wake him up from the bed. Because Colored Glaze had already moved back to the Komashiro villa, Now Ryuto returned to his familiar room. But even so, Dunya never felt shy about rushing into this man's room. Not long after, when Dunya and Ryuto sat together at the dining table to eat breakfast, this little bear didn't hesitate to take out a frosted glass from the fridge and put it to her rosy lips, pouring the vodka inside into her mouth. Looking at the way Dunya drank the vodka, it felt like an ordinary girl drinking sweet milk tea. But in fact, it was a strong liquor with more than 60 degrees, the kind that a strong man could drink in one gulp. After drinking more than half of the glass in one go, Dunya put the glass on the table and laughed. Phew! On such a hot day, it's so satisfying to drink an iced drink after training. I think it's hard to classify vodka with more than 60 degrees as a drink. In the eyes of the northerners, this is a drink. With such a low degree, you won't get drunk no matter how much you drink. After finishing the vodka that was only slightly over 60 degrees, Dunya picked up the knife and fork to enjoy the Russian pancakes on the plate. These pancakes were Dunya's favorite breakfast. She even proudly said, "There's no bear who doesn't love pancakes." But pancakes made of flour, eggs, and milk with sour cream and fruits on top, it was indeed hard to dislike such delicious food. But no matter how much she liked it, Dunya ate a little too much. After finishing the 16th plate of pancakes, she burped ungracefully, a white sticky cream foam still remaining at the corner of her mouth. Phew! This girl is really something. Ryuto couldn't help but pick up a tissue from the side. He held Dunya's little face with one hand and wiped the cream foam at the corner of her mouth with the other. Such an intimate action usually only happened between family members or lovers. But at this moment, the two of them were doing it very naturally, making it hard to tell what the relationship between the two was. That's right, what was the relationship between Ryuto and Dunya? They usually hung out together when they had nothing to do, either practicing martial arts or chatting. Dunya often came over to eat, drink, and stay at his place, so much so that the chef at the Rulon Group headquarters even learned a bunch of bear dishes just to cook for her. If the two of them were both men, then they would definitely be bad friends and best friends. But since they were a man and a woman, it was hard to fathom their strange relationship. But when Ryuto and Dunya took the car to Duli First High early in the morning, he felt that this strange relationship was actually quite good. After all, compared to Yunyan and colored glaze, Dunya's personality was more boorish and tomboyish. When he was with her, he didn't have to think about anything. He could say whatever he wanted, do whatever he wanted. Even if they went crazy together, it wouldn't feel out of place. This feeling of being with a bad friend was something that couldn't be found when he was with the two beauties. For example, if Ryuto suddenly hugged Yunyan and colored glaze from behind, the former would turn pale with fright and the latter would turn around and get angry. But if the person being hugged from behind was Dunya, she would take the opportunity to clamp Ryuto's neck with her arms, give him a common clip-on in professional wrestling, and then let out a tasteless laugh. How to put it, this way of getting along really made Ryuto feel very relaxed. The most important thing was that Dunya was a white-haired beauty who looked more beautiful than a doll. That was simply awesome. In this way, the two drove to Duli First High, as usual. On the way, Dunya casually asked, "By the way, it seems that the opening of Tokyo Big Body Raising Festival is in a week. Have you participated in it last time?" Tokyo Big Body Raising Festival. What is it again? Hearing Dunya's question, Ryuto couldn't help but scratch his head as if he had no impression of this term. Chapter 243. When she heard Ryuto's question, Dunya couldn't help but ridicule, "No way. Are you born and raised in Tokyo? How come you don't even know about the Tokyo General Educational Festival?" "I'm a native of Tokyo." "Hooligan, you don't think hooligans will be interested in those high school activities, right?" At this point, Long Do puffed out his chest proudly. He didn't feel ashamed at all. Instead, he felt proud. In fact, this was indeed the case. Before this year, the original owner of Ryuto's body basically didn't go to school. It was already hard work to go to school every day. Moreover, with his hooligan identity, no one dared to invite him to participate in school activities. Isn't that asking for a snub? So almost all the school activities in the past, Ryuto gloriously missed them. However, the situation this year was completely different from last year. Last year, Ryuto Kiryu, who was still a freshman in high school, was a bastard with no charm. Let alone a girlfriend, he couldn't even find a friend. But this year, he had unexpectedly become the #1 high school in Kyoto, and even the king of popularity in Tokyo. Especially the Kokyo middle finger incident 2 months ago, it had allowed him to climb to the top of high school. Therefore, it was difficult to say that the upcoming Tokyo General Educational Festival had nothing to do with Ryuto. After all, there was a traditional event in this sports festival, which was the most eye-catching 5 schools opening ceremony. The students of the 5 high schools participating in the Tokyo General Educational Festival would gather together, and the sworn representative, elected through voting, would be responsible for reading some nonsense. It was almost the same thing. But since this sworn representative was elected through voting, it was equivalent to a kind of popularity selection. Since it was a popularity vote, most of the people who were elected were beautiful women. For example, the sworn representative elected last year was Kanzaki Colored Glaze. The year before last was Yunyen Tsukujiri. This year's sworn representative should have been Dunya, but, look, your votes are way ahead of the rest of the candidates. You have more votes than all the other candidates combined. Immediately, Dunya opened the e-Gao BBS in annoyance and showed the real-time votes in front of Ryuto. Since it was the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival, it was naturally impossible for only Dori #1 High School to participate. In fact, this was a large-scale sports festival held by 5 high schools together, so the number of candidates participating in the voting was naturally very large. In previous years, the popularity poll for Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival sworn representative should still be in full swing, but this year's poll had already come to an end. Unlike previous years, there was a bastard named Ryuto Kiryu, who had more votes than the runner-up by more than 100 times. The others didn't even need to vote, even beautiful girls like Yunyen and Colored Glaze. Ryuto could only smile bitterly when he saw the ridiculous number of votes. Are you kidding me? Are these guys crazy? Why are they voting for me like crazy? It can't be helped. Most of the residents of Tokyo have heard of the name Ryuto Kiryu. Most people will vote for someone familiar. Isn't this a matter of course? Ha 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 ha. At this point, Dunya couldn't help but laugh loudly. The barbell-like laughter filled the entire car, making people feel more and more depressed. Although Dunya felt a little upset that she was not chosen, compared to this, she was obviously more willing to see Ryuto's expression when he was defeated. After all, in the previous Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival, students who were sworn representatives needed to participate in at least one sports event. In other words, Ryuto definitely couldn't be a spectator this time. He also had to participate in the activities. However, when Ryuto learned this, he curled his lips and said disdainfully, "Asking me to participate in these high school-level sports events is simply bullying a child. What's the point of this?" Indeed, Ryuto had no experience in participating in sports events. He didn't know anything, but he was the strongest high school athlete. Thanks to the LV4 physique of the international warrior level, Ryuto's physical fitness had far exceeded the range of high school students. Therefore, as long as he was willing to look at the rules, he could win any sports event on the spot. Really? But there are some events that can't be won by strength and speed alone. For example, football, basketball, baseball that emphasizes team cooperation, or table tennis, kendo, and so on that rely more on skills. Tesuke. Ryuto heard the words and snorted disdainfully. He smiled and said, "As long as I am willing to participate in these events you mentioned, the championships are all mine. None of them can run away." Really? Then how about a bet? After hearing this sentence, Dunya's eyes lit up and proposed a bet again. During this period of time, the two of them had also made some childish bets while playing around. For example, they bet on who could run faster, and the loser would have to give the winner a massage or something like that. It was just that because Dunya's brain was not very good, most of the bets had already determined the fact that Ryuto was the beneficiary at the moment when they were made. After all, whether it was being massaged by Dunya's little hand or helping to massage Dunya's soft body, it was the supreme enjoyment for Ryuto. Of course, he wouldn't be stupid enough to tell this white stupid bear about this kind of thing. Because he could take advantage of every bet, Ryuto also asked with a smile, "Bet? What are you going to bet this time?" "Let's bet whether you can win the championship of the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival in the 6 events mentioned just now. It's all 6, not one less. And this is not impossible, but the question is, what are you going to bet with? If I win, you have to take me to the Riverside Hara Arena." It's as simple as that. When mentioning this name, Dunya couldn't help swallowing a mouthful of saliva as if she was yearning for that place. In fact, after Yun Yen accidentally mentioned the experience of going to the Riverside Hara Arena with Ryuto, Dunya had been drooling over the legendary underground arena. Dunya's character was well known. She was the kind of person who refused to admit defeat, had a bad temper, and often wanted to beat people. But it had to be said that since the painful lesson of the Tokyo Regal Hotel incident, Dunya was indeed very diligent on the road of martial arts. She was so diligent that even Ryuto admired her. With the careful guidance of Ryuto and Wu Hong, coupled with Dunya's own good talent, superhuman physical fitness, and the belief of absolutely becoming stronger, the girl's cultivation during this period could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. She was already a different person from 2 months ago. So in the past 2 months, the eldest daughter of the Saito family had almost kicked all the dojos in Tokyo. It became more and more difficult to find a strong opponent. From this perspective, it wasn't that Long Do couldn't understand why she wanted to go to the underground arena to find stronger opponents to spar with. However, the problem was that the original arena of the river race wasn't a place that anyone could enter. Now Ryuto had fought more than 10 matches in the Riverside Hara Arena, and successfully promoted to A-level fighter. He had a comprehensive understanding of the environment there. How to describe it? The fighters who fought underground there were basically trash from all over the world. They were either homicidal maniacs or martial arts fanatics. Moreover, it was not a place for fighting, but a place for catching and killing. In order to win, the group of underground fighters could be said to be extremely unscrupulous. They could use any dirty moves without any hesitation. For example, the American murderer Ryuto encountered before who hid a knife in his butt. After fighting with B-level and A-level, Ryuto found that the guy was more reserved. He even transformed his finger into a spray gun and quietly sprayed dragon breath pepper spray on the opponent's face. This kind of underground fight without seeing the sun and having no rules was naturally different from the various dojo fights that Dunya had challenged before. The dirtiness was more than 100 times. Therefore, even if Dunya's strength was already weak, Ryuto was still unwilling to take her to the Riverside Hara Arena, because he was afraid that she would be tricked by some dirty tricks. It was just that what he didn't expect was that this white stupid bear actually mentioned this matter again in the name of Tokyo Mass Breeding Festival here, and it even showed a "do you agree or not? If you don't agree, you are afraid to bet with me" provocative expression. Well, I still have to let her dispel this idea. That damn place is too dangerous. I don't want her to go. Thinking of this, Ryuto sighed slightly in his heart, but his face showed a wretched expression. He said with a weird smile, "If you plan to use this as a bet with me, then you have to pay the corresponding price." Corresponding price? Isn't it a massage as the price? Of course not a massage. In fact, there is one thing I want to do to you for a long time. Let's use this as a bet. What is it? I have no problem with it. Seeing Ryuto's expression that was different from usual and looked particularly wretched, Dunya was obviously stunned, but she still forced herself to straighten her back and replied, "It's good that you have no problem. If you lose, let me hug you to sleep for a night." What? Sleep for a night. The moment she heard Ryuto's outrageous bet, Dunya's cute twin ponytails on her head almost stood up, like a kitten with its hair standing on end. If I lose, let him hug me to sleep for a night? Although Dunya usually behaved carelessly, she was still a teenage girl. How could she not have any awareness of the opposite sex? So at this time, when she heard Ryuto's request that was completely like X's harassment, her face suddenly flushed, and her body unconsciously stepped back. How about it? If it doesn't work, then cancel this bet. I don't care anyway. After seeing Dunya's panicked expression, Ryuto secretly laughed in his heart, but his face continued to maintain the expression of a weird uncle looking at the white-haired little loli next to him. This scene made people want to call 110 on the spot. In essence, Ryuto didn't want to make this bet with Dunya, because participating in the Tokyo Mass Breeding Festival sounded very troublesome, and it would be even more troublesome if he accidentally lost. That was why he deliberately proposed such a ridiculous bet, hoping that Dunya would give up on her own accord. Give up, just give up, you don't want to be hugged by me. Humph. No problem. Let's bet. I'm not afraid of you, bastard. But after a few seconds of silence, Dunya roared with a flushed face, and her voice almost blew Ryuto's head off. Obviously, Ryuto seemed to have underestimated Dunya's determination. Perhaps he also underestimated the thickness of her face. She could even accept such a stupid job. This is a wonderful catch. Chapter 244. Ryuto wasn't wrong. He really wanted to hug Dunya to sleep. It was just that this kind of sleep was not the kind of sleep. It was a pure sleep where one would hug someone as a pillow and not do anything messy. The reason why he had this idea was because Dunya's body really suited Ryuto's taste. After all, this Northland bear was very cute. Her skin was white and her body was slender. She was as delicate as a living doll. On the other hand, her body was much stronger than ordinary people. No matter how much force he used, there wouldn't be any problems. This kind of strong body was really what Ryuto liked. No matter how much force he used, she wouldn't cry out in pain. Ahem, of course, it was just the kind of force that he wanted to use to rub her like a large pillow. There was no other meaning. However, Ryuto didn't think that Dunya would really agree to this bet. At first, he only wanted to scare the girl away to prevent more trouble. It's decided then. This time's Tokyo Mass Raising Festival will be the time for us to decide the winner. Even when the two arrived at the gate of Dooley First High School, and Dunya walked toward the first-year teaching building, she couldn't help but raise her head and puff out her chest. From Dunya's attitude, it seemed like she really didn't care that she had to sleep with Ryuto for a night. Although this Northland bear probably didn't know what would happen if she slept with a man for a night. That's right, the balloon incident from before was still fresh in her mind. Sigh. What the hell is this? When Ryuto accepted a bet early in the morning and felt complicated about the strange thing that he bet, the next thing that happened made his feelings even more complicated. Generally speaking, the students of Tokuri First High School had to change into indoor shoes before entering the building. Although it was troublesome, rules were rules. So Ryuto went to his shoe cabinet as usual and reached out to open it. Crash. Then, a huge pile of love letters and gifts poured out from the shoe cabinet and smashed his face. The total weight of today's love letter and gift is 23 kilograms? After quickly tidying up the pile of things, Ryuto couldn't help but sigh. He felt even more tired in the morning. If it had been Ryuto, the greatest villain in history, from a few months ago, it would have been hard to imagine such a scene. Early in the morning, the shoe cabinet was stuffed with love letters and gifts. It was the kind of treatment that only school idols would receive. But in reality, the current Ryuto was indeed a campus idol-level existence. His LV4 charm was second only to Yunyen here. Moreover, there were many amazing things that had been revealed, so it wasn't too far-fetched for many students to take a fancy to him. Ryuto was actually a little happy about this situation. After all, no one would really hate a shoe cabinet full of love letters and gifts. Of course, if there weren't so many male students who sent him love letters and gifts, it would be better. Damn it! Cursing under his breath, Long Do picked out the love letter with the words, Long Do Kuen, I want to fence with you, on the cover and threw it into the trash can. Then, he packed up the rest of the love letters and gifts and put them back in the shoe cabinet. He planned to take them with him after school. Ring 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 ring. But just as he was about to go to the classroom, his phone suddenly vibrated. Apparently, someone sent a message. Old man Adolf. Is it the principal? Is he looking for me? Ryuto picked up the phone and saw that it was the old principal who sent a, "Are you free? Come to the principal's office," message. It looked like the old man was lonely and wanted someone to accompany him. Long Do was also very familiar with the principal, Adolphe Pescarolo, who matched his suit and wine glass very well. It was obvious that he was an old gentleman at a glance. Long Do was also very familiar with him. After all, from the beginning, Ryuto was able to enter this Kyoto First High School because of the old principal's great efforts. One of the reasons was that when he was dancing outside, he touched the butt of a Kyokushin girlfriend and was almost hit in the head by her boyfriend with a bottle. It was a passerby who saved him. It was also because of this relationship, plus the fact that the old principal was indeed an interesting old man, Ryuto usually had a good relationship with him. He would go to the principal's office to sit and play games with him. But at this time, in the principal's office of Kyoto First High School, Principal Adolphe was anxiously sitting in a chair with his hand on his forehead. There was a document on the principal's table. According to the document, the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival swearing representative was Ryuto Kiryo. It also deliberately reminded the principal of Kyoto First High School to let the student attend and participate in the sports competition. In fact, since a long time ago, this so-called Tokyo Metropolitan Education Festival was a competition between 5 of the more famous universities in Tokyo in order to attract outstanding students. Therefore, every time the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival opened, it was tantamount to a war for Adolphe, a war that could not be lost. Especially 2 years ago, the swearing representative that could attract popularity to the school was consecutively won by 2 beauties from Ichihin High School. While this brought a lot of popularity to Ichihin High School, it also attracted the jealousy of the other 4 high schools. Jealousy made people unrecognizable, especially between old men. Aya, Principal Adolphe, this year's swearing representative is from your school again. It's really glorious. Isn't it? And it's a Kyokushin young master, haha. Alright, he's a big shot. Will he come to participate in the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival? If he doesn't show up, how will Ichihin High School get off the stage? How is that possible? Principal Adolphe will definitely deal with that Kyokushin young master, right? Just last night, at the banquet where the principals of the 5 high schools gathered together, the other 4 principals made all kinds of sarcasm and ridicule to Adolphe about Ryuto, as if they were sure that the Kyokushin young master would not participate in this kind of high school level competition. But from an objective point of view, what they said was not completely unreasonable. After all, last year when Ryuto was in the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival, he chose to run away directly. He ran to the street and beat up by Chinga. Adolphe knew this very well, and he knew that the Kyokushin young master was indeed not interested in this kind of activity. Thinking of this, Adolphe almost didn't sleep last night. He had been thinking about how to persuade Ryuto. In the end, Adolphe thought of a very shameless way, commonly known as crying, making a scene, and kneeling down. Ryuto-kun. For the sake of your father and I know each other. Just give this old man some face, okay? Ryuto-kun. You must come and participate in the competition. Otherwise, how can an old man like me live? Ryuto-kun. Do you think my posture under the ground is standard? Do you have the heart to let an old man like me kneel on the ground like this? Just as Adolphe was imagining himself crying and kneeling down in various positions in his mind, the door of the principal's office was pushed open from the outside, and the familiar figure walked in leisurely. Very good, ready to attack at any time. Suddenly, Adolphe swallowed a mouthful of saliva and reached out to touch the knee pads that had been wrapped around his knees. Because Adolphe has rich experience in kneeling to his wife, he knows very well how to do this Japanese etiquette to the extreme. That, Ryuto-kun, you see. By the way, old man, I want to participate in 6 events in the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival in a week. This should be okay, right? Before Adolphe began to cry and kneel down with snot and tears, Ryuto, who walked in the door, took the lead and said such a sentence. Did IF asterisk King hear it wrong? Ryuto? Ryuto Kiryu? He took the initiative to participate in the Tokyo Metropolitan Festival project? Doesn't that mean I don't have to kneel? Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Adolphe couldn't help but laugh out loud, and there was a sense of heroism in his laughter. Before Ryuto could figure out what this guy was laughing about, he reached out and patted Ryuto on the shoulder and laughed. No problem. Although it's reasonable to say that each person can only participate in one event, I will use the principal's privilege to help you open the back door and guarantee that you can participate in all 6 events. Oh, thank you very much. You're welcome, it's what I should do. By the way, why did you ask me to come here? Actually, I just want to inform you that you have been selected as the representative of the oath ceremony, and you will have to speak on stage. That's all. Sigh, it's nice to have a principal who is easy to talk to. This kind of thing that doesn't conform to the rules can be easily explained. When leaving the principal's office, Ryuto nodded, and his impression of the old man Adolphe increased a lot. However, in the principal's office, Adolphe jumped up from behind the table and directly slid on the floor in excitement. Yay! Ha 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 ha! He looked a little old, but his body, which had been tested on the dance floor for a long time, quickly slid across the floor with the help of his knee pads. Furthermore, he struck a very Chunibyu pose, like the brightest child in the dance hall. Adolphe originally planned to use all kinds of methods to ask Ryuto to participate in one event, even if it was just to go through the motions, but he didn't expect Ryuto to be so generous, and actually took the initiative to ask to participate in 6 events at once. 6 events. 6 of them. This isn't a pillow when you're sleepy, but a sweet when you're sleepy. There's a beauty in a cool nightgown in the room to warm your bed. Humph, this is great. With the participation of the Dragon Fighting Lord, I will definitely be able to win all 6 competitions. Those old fogies who were waiting to see me make a fool of myself, let's see if you will die this time. Adolphe naturally knew Ryuto's strength that surpassed the level of a high school student. Therefore, he was really looking forward to seeing this monster play with the elite soldiers sent by the other 4 schools at the Tokyo Great Festival. What kind of interesting expression would the 4 old men have on their faces? Chapter 245. In the eyes of ordinary people, the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival was just an ordinary sports meet for high school students. However, for the 5 participating high schools, this sports meet was an earth-shattering battle. Nobody knew when it started, but this sports meet had become a battlefield for the 5 high schools to compete with each other. Every time the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival opened, the sports clubs of these high schools would be full of energy and do everything they could to win for their school. This was not a battle of life and death. However, it was a battle that involved the dignity of the school. Battle. 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 Constant battle. The winner was king. The loser was the bandit. The winning high school would hold their heads high and walk with pride for the next year. The losing high school would be dejected and cowardly for the next year. Under the leadership of this evil trend, the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival became more and more exaggerated every year. In order to win, the group of high schools became more and more unscrupulous. Dori No. 2 High School was a high school with a long tradition in the sport of football. On the football field that was a week away from the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival, a handsome high school student was running with the ball. He suddenly picked up the ball, jumped up, and swept out a golden hook that was at the professional level. He directly kicked the football from a distance of tens of meters into the goal. Well done, Student E. This will be your last high school competition before you go to Brazil to participate in the professional competition. Leave your legend behind. Looking at the captain of the football team who already had the strength of a professional football player and had led the team to win the high school national competition for 3 consecutive years, the principal of Dori No. 2 High School could not help but smile happily. On the other side, in the Dori No. 3 High School, a bloody storm was also taking place on the tennis court, which made people drop their glasses. Boom! A young man with a white hat who looked very arrogant quickly whipped the tennis racket in his hand and accurately knocked his opponent's tennis racket to the ground. You're still far from it. The young man used his hand to support his hat and threw out a very arrogant sentence. Yes, yes, yes. Student Ryuma's condition is very good. It seems that the 3 consecutive victories of this tennis event are close at hand. Seeing that the student known as the Prince of Tennis showed good competitive condition, the principal of Dori No. 3 High School was even more delighted. At the same time, on the basketball court of Dori No. 4 High School, a tall young man with dyed red hair was practicing with a big guy who looked like an orangutan. The person who controls the rebound can control the entire game. You must remember this. No problem. I'm a genius. The practice on the basketball court was in full swing, and a chubby coach standing next to the basketball court was nodding silently. As for the principal of Dori 4th High School, he had already run to the tavern to drink and celebrate. In the end, 2 swordsmen wearing full protective kendo gear were confronting each other in the dojo of Duri Diwu High School. Student Yaguyuma, bring it on. I won't lose. With a confident response, the 2 swordsmen holding bamboo swords quickly began a fierce battle. However, if one was a fan of kendo, it was not difficult to find that the swordsman on the left was actually the most famous professional kendo athlete in Japan. His sword was like the wind, and his movements were agile. At first glance, it was obvious that he was not a high school swordsman. However, student Yagiyuma, who was fighting with this professional kendo athlete, was even more amazing. He actually blocked all the attacks one by one as a high school student, and could even make a counterattack. Very good. With student Yagiyuma's condition, the kendo event of Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival will definitely be won. Russell. Seeing the fierce battle on the court, the principal of Dori No. 5 High School held a paper fan in his hand and waved it slowly with satisfaction. Obviously, from the current situation, although there was still a full week before the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival, the 5 participating schools had already made sufficient preparations for it. For this unique sports festival, every school had their own sports events that they were good at. Coincidentally, among this generation of high school students, there were also a lot of high school freaks who were at professional level. Football, basketball, baseball, table tennis, tennis, kendo. These very normal high school sports events had become turbulent because of the influx of these freaks. According to the convention of the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival, the 5 schools would compete fiercely in a total of 10 sports events, but the scores of the above 6 major events were the highest. Therefore, as long as they could win 2 or 3 of the 6 major events, the final championship was almost at their fingertips. At the thought of this, the principals of Dori No. 2, No. 3, No. 4, and No. 5 High School had a tacit understanding with the corners of their mouths crooked at the same time, revealing a tick smile. Humph, this time our school is full of heroes and geniuses, called the Golden Generation. How can the other schools compete with us? This Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival 1. Looking at the group of high school sports geniuses who were training crazily, the principals of these schools clenched their fists and even thought about their final posture when they went up to receive the championship trophy. Of course, if this was just an ordinary sports festival, then their idea might be right. After all, the group of sports students in their school were indeed monsters far beyond the level of high school students. Unfortunately, in Dori No. 1 High School, there was a real monster, and he was rubbing his hands and trying to familiarize himself with the rules of these games in order to get the right to sleep with a little loli. In this way, time passed day by day, and the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival, that was destined to be recorded in history, finally slowly opened its curtains. The day after a week was a carnival day for all the students of the 5 high schools. Because on this day, they could put down their heavy studies and collectively go to the Tokyo Stadium to watch the exciting sports games. The blend of sweat with sweat, the collision of muscles with muscles, the concert of youth with youth. Just thinking of the scene of the group of high school athletes on the field, many girls couldn't help but cover their faces and scream out loud. In this case, early in the morning, the entrance of the Tokyo Stadium was already crowded with young people in school uniforms, and under the arrangement of the teachers, they rushed inside noisily. The Tokyo Stadium, located in the Shibuya district of Tokyo, Japan, was one of the most famous sports venues in Tokyo. It was once used to host Olympic-level competitions. Such a huge venue was actually used to host a high school sports event, which was somewhat exaggerated. But considering that the stadium that could accommodate 10,000 people was already full in the early morning, it was enough to see the status of this Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival. Young people, full of vigor, naturally liked this kind of intense activity very much. However, for the 5 college principals sitting in the VIP stands, they seemed to be much more enthusiastic about this sports festival than the group of hot-blooded young people. Looking carefully, in the VIP stands, 5 seats were lined up in a row, and the principals from the 5 schools sat on them one by one. It was quite like the 5 elder stars patrolling the battlefield. At this moment, the athlete teams of the 5 schools had also appeared from 5 different entrances, holding flags and walking to the field in the middle of the stadium. Hundreds of young athletes walked together valiantly, and this scene caused the group of students in the stands to scream and cheer again. However, in this huge square formation of students, there was a guy with dyed yellow hair who looked particularly conspicuous, obviously giving people the feeling that he was a crane in a flock of chickens. "Adolphe, I didn't expect you to actually invite Ryuto Kiryu. You are really amazing." Looking at the yellow-haired young master walking toward the oath stage, the principal of another school couldn't help but congratulate Adolphe in a sarcastic tone. "Exactly, it seems that Ryuto Kiryu is not as unruly as the rumors say. By the way, he is also going to participate in the competition. Which competition is he going to participate in? After all, he is from Jido, it should be good for him to participate in the kendo competition. Although he is definitely not as good as our classmate Yagyu, his ancestors were in the kendo industry, ha ha ha." In the VIP stands, the principals chatted because of the appearance of Ryuto, looking like a group of old men buying vegetables at the market. However, Adolphe, who was the center of the conversation, just smiled and didn't intend to argue with this group of stupid principals at all. Because he knew very well that from the moment Ryuto was willing to step on the field, this Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival had already changed. This was no longer a competition. Instead, it was a one-sided trampling. At the same time, Ryuto, as the oath representative, also walked to the oath stage under the invitation of the MC and bathed in the eyes of tens of thousands of students. Tong Shang, please represent the 5 schools to take the oath of this Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival. Although the MC felt a little numb when he saw the legendary leader of Jido, the professional MC still handed the microphone to Ryuto with a smile. Generally speaking, this oath ceremony was actually a very formal event. It was nothing more than saying a few words, "Swear that all contestants will follow the spirit of sports." However, after Ryuto picked up the microphone, he grinned, coughed twice, and said the following oath speech that was enough to be recorded in history. "Dear audience, and the contestants who are coming to win the runner-up, good morning." When he said the words "win the runner-up," Ryuto's tone showed an arrogant tone of, "I'm not targeting anyone, I'm saying that everyone here is trash." Chapter 246. The moment they heard this, almost all the audience, players, and staff members present were dumbfounded. After all the oath ceremonies in the past were to promote the spirit of sports and praise the spirit of young people. They had never heard such a unique speech. In particular, Long Do's "everyone here is trash" aura gave everyone a fright. If it had been anyone else who dared to say such a thing in public, they would have been dragged down and beaten up by the angry players. But the person who said this was Ryuto, the legendary young overlord who commanded the entire Tokyo underground world. Therefore, the players who were ridiculed by him could only be angry and not say anything. But after all, the young people were more hot-blooded, especially those who were stronger. They had already secretly remembered this hatred and were ready to teach this guy a lesson in the game later. "Humph, Ryuto Kiryu. Although you are the leader of the underground world, we are the experts in sports games. Prepare to die." When Ryuto casually made up a speech to fool this unique oath ceremony, the fighting spirit of the athletes was obviously greatly aroused. "Is that guy an idiot? Will he die if he doesn't provoke others?" Just as the athletes were about to leave and go to different venues for the game, Colored Glaze, who was sitting in the front row of the stands, couldn't help but reach out and cover her head, as if she had a headache. Although she had already guessed that Long Do would definitely not finish his speech so obediently and would definitely cause some trouble, she did not expect him to go up and make such a big fuss. Now, he suddenly became the public enemy of the other 4 schools, who knew how many people were holding back their energy to beat Ryuto to pieces. But Yunyen, who was sitting next to her, laughed and said, "Isn't this very Ryuto's style? Provocation is also one of the entertainment parts of the game. Look at how happy the audience is." As Yunyen said this, she looked around at the students sitting in the stands near the big stadium. In fact, as Yunyen said, after experiencing the crazy oath ceremony just now, the students' emotions were all stirred up. Now, the emotions of the students were all stirred up. Many people even quickly edited and posted this matter on the internet, so that they could ride on the hot topic and get some traffic or something. After all, Ryuto Kiryu participated in the high school sports meet and provoked all the players in the opening speech. This was such a hot-blooded event. If it was any other student who did such a thing, they might be condemned in speech and in writing. However, the one who did this was Long Do. Everyone was already used to his unconventional behavior. It was normal for him to do something as trivial as giving the middle finger to someone in Hwangju. At this time, Tonya, who was sitting with the 2 of them, took out her mobile phone and looked at the schedule of this Tokyo Great Festival, and said, "Speaking of which, the first event in a while is football. It's our school against Dori Second High School. Dori Number 2 High School? I heard that their football department is very strong. It's not as simple as that. They are the 3 consecutive champions of the National High School Football Competition. The ace player, Space Wing, is said to be going to Brazil to play professional games next year." Wow, so powerful. Can Ryuto win? After hearing Dunya's words, Yunyen covered her mouth in surprise. Whether Ryuto wins or not is one thing. The key is whether his teammates will cooperate. After all, football is not a one-person sport. Speaking of this, Colored Glaze couldn't help but sigh. She seemed to have thought of the various situations that might occur in the game. From the perspective of strength, the football department of Dori Number 1 High School was actually not weak. They were often at the level of the top 4 to the top 8 in the national competition. It was not completely impossible to play with the opponent. But the problem was that Long Do, with the full support of the principal, had forcefully cut the line and squeezed out the position of the other team's main midfielder. This matter must have offended a lot of people in the football department. Therefore, in the game later, those guys were likely to make things difficult for Ryuto. It would not be surprising if they deliberately lost the game. In fact, just as Color Glaze thought, it was impossible for the group of football department members to not be angry. At this time, in the players' lounge, the other 10 members and coaches who were ready to play were gathered in a group for the final pre-game mobilization. Ryuto was nowhere to be seen. No one knew where he ran off to. Damn it, the game is about to start and that guy still hasn't shown up? After taking a deep breath, the coach couldn't help but say to the other group of players, "As I said before, letting that stinking hooligan step on the sacred football field is a blasphemy to this sport. You know what to do, right? Firmly oppose Ryuto Kiryu. Who wants to play football with him? This guy is too much. He forced his way in and said he wants to play. How can we let him do as he wishes? In short, we will never pass the ball to him. We must make that guy stand on the field for 90 minutes. That's right." The coach finally sneered and said, "Winning or losing is not important. The most important thing is that we must not let him touch the ball, not even once. Bet on the glory of our football department." Whoa, 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 whoa. Bet on the glory of our football department. In the players' lounge, everyone in the Duli First High School football department reached a consensus and made up their minds to make Ryuto a figurehead in the game. Humph, a stinking hooligan like you is worthy of playing football? Let's see if we don't make you stand on the field for 90 minutes. When the time comes, let's see who will be the one making a fool of themselves. Not long after, this aggressive and stern-looking football team was led out of the field by the coach cum team leader. At this time, Ryuto slowly came over to gather. However, unlike the football department members who were neatly dressed in football uniforms and sports shoes, looking very proper, Ryuto was actually only wearing his usual school uniform. He didn't even wear sports shoes. After coming over to gather, Ryuto stood in front of the coach without hesitation and was the first to walk to the field. Those who didn't know better would think that he was really the boss of the football department. This unspeakably arrogant move immediately made the group of people behind him so angry that their eyes were blazing. However, due to Ryuto's prestige, this group of club members didn't dare to say anything. They could only secretly curse this stinking hooligan to die a horrible death. This ridiculous guy actually wore normal shoes to play football. But forget it, he can't touch the ball anyway. He'll just be a good clown on the field. When they thought that Ryuto would become the funniest clown on the field, the coach and the other team members couldn't help but laugh. That's right. Just before they were about to enter the field, Ryuto suddenly turned his head to look at them, giving everyone a fright. Before we start, let me remind you that my way of playing football will be a bit rough. I hope you can forgive me. Way of playing football? A bit rough? What is this guy talking about? Does he really think that he has a chance to play football? Hearing this, the coach could only smile dryly and said, "Yes, yes, yes, you can play however you like. Is this okay?" "Oh, that's very generous. Then I won't hold back." Suddenly, the corner of Ryuto's mouth raised. He then took the lead to walk out of the players' tunnel and came to the field covered in green. Oh. It's Ryuto-kun. He's out. Huh? Why is Ryuto-kun wearing different clothes? This is probably a crane in a flock of chickens. It doesn't matter, as long as he's handsome. At this time, almost all the spectators were watching this unprecedented game on the football field, so when Ryuto led the team to appear, it naturally caused the audience to cheer. However, after hearing so many students, especially so many girls cheering for Ryuto, the football club members were obviously even more upset. Why do you think our group of high school students work so hard to join the sports club, train hard every day to play in the game? Isn't it just for the cheers of the girls? Generally speaking, the period after the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival was the period when the boys in the sports club were most popular with girls. The probability of finding a girlfriend at this time was unprecedentedly high. Therefore, the Tokyo Metropolitan Cultural Festival was the best stage for many boys to show themselves. The long-awaited opportunity to stand in the spotlight was equivalent to a male peacock spreading its tail to seek a mate. However, Ryuto Kiryu, this little bastard, directly blocked the way and attracted all the attention of the entire football club. The girls did not look at them and all began to stare at Ryuto and cheer. Without the attention of the girls, what's the point of me playing the game? Go F***ck yourself. Thinking of this, the 10 players on the field slowly walked to their positions while they could not help but look at Ryuto with eyes full of hatred. They could not wait for this kid to die on the spot. At the same time, on the other side of the field, the players of Turi Second High School were ready to start the game. The referee also put the whistle in his mouth to announce the start of the game. It was almost time. 3, 2, 1. Beep. Accompanied by a harsh whistle, a striker of Turi First High School, who was responsible for the kickoff in the first half, gently kicked the ball to his teammate. Ryuto is the midfielder, so I will pass the ball to the left and right sides. Anyway, as long as it bypasses him. Wait. Be careful. Just as the striker who got the ball was about to pass the ball to the wing, there was suddenly an anxious roar from behind. Be careful. Be careful of what? There is a big gap on the opposite side. Before the forward who stopped the ball could react, a figure flashed from behind like lightning and came to the front of the forward. Immediately afterward, the ball that was stopped at his feet suddenly disappeared out of thin air, and with a strong wind sound, it rushed directly from the midfield to the opponent's goal with lightning speed. Whoosh! Almost in the next second, the ball that had just rolled half a meter in the center circle had turned into a meteor falling from the sky. It fell into the goal of the opponent's camp with incomparable ferocity. Chapter 247. What am I looking at? Isn't this the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival? Isn't this a football game between two high schools? Why? Why would a football game have such a scene where a goal is scored within a second after the kickoff? Could it be? Is this the real football? Is this how football is played? For a time, many people who saw the scene just now had a cognitive deviation from the wonderful sport of football. As for the people who were more surprised than the audience, it was naturally the other 21 football players who were just ready to sweat their youth on the football field. What the F***CK? Is there something wrong with my brain? Although the striker who had just completed the glorious stopping work and was still standing in the same place at this time did not know what had happened, most of the other players clearly saw the whole process of the goal just now. The moment the two strikers had just finished the kickoff and stopped the ball, Ryuto, who was standing in the back midfield, had already rushed to his own striker at a speed much faster than the 100-meter race champion, and then kicked the ball out with a smooth volley. The flight trajectory of this ball was nothing special. It just rushed straight out of the goal, but the problem was that its power and speed were really too exaggerated. This was the Tokyo Stadium. The football field inside was naturally the international standard 68-meter x 105-meter field. The distance from the center circle to the goal frame was more than 50 meters. From more than 50 meters away, a shot from the center circle into the goal frame, and even the goalkeeper could not react. What kind of concept was this? In fact, if you have this ability, you can just go to the World Cup and get the Golden Boot. Why come to a high school-level football game to bully children? If it were not for the fact that no one dared to speak to Ryuto like this, it was estimated that many people would have said that to him. Beast, it was really too much of a beast. It was simply not something that a human being could do. Poof. Beep. Perhaps it was because the scene was too horrifying. The referee was stunned for a few seconds before he reacted and blew the whistle on his neck. The first time he blew it the wrong way, making a sound similar to a fart. Go in. There's a goal near the capital. It's effective. 1-0. At this time, the host in charge of the commentary was so frightened that he changed from a broadcasting major to a stuttering major. He explained with a stuttering ventriloquism that would make his broadcasting teacher so angry that he would bang his head against the wall. But even so, no one cared about the host's little problem because everyone was stunned by Ryuto's earth-shattering kick. No. Impossible. It must be luck. How could a high school student kick such a ball? Just as the players of Dori know. Two high school quickly calmed down and prepared to kick off. Something even more terrifying happened. The moment the two players kicked the ball out, Ryuto's figure once again rushed out like lightning. He actually snatched the ball away from them. His speed was so fast that no one could react in time. Then, he lifted his leg and shot at the goal. The ball once again rushed towards the goal with the momentum of a meteor chasing the moon. He saw it. But because the goalkeeper was prepared this time, the burly goalkeeper also rushed towards the ball without any regard for his own safety. Then, he was shot into the goal along with the ball. That's right, it was not an exaggeration at all. It was the truth. When the goalkeeper barely caught the ball with both hands, the terrifying force of the ball directly pushed his body back. He and the ball hit the net together. Immediately, it became a 2-0 situation. What? How could this be played? How could this game be played? The goalkeeper hugged the ball and was shot into the net. Was this something that a human could do? In this way, under the stunned gaze of all the spectators and the players on the field, the following field could be said to be completely hosting a fantasy football game from another world. Every time the ball was kicked out, Ryuto's figure would quickly rush over there, snatch the ball and shoot directly on the spot. His speed was too fast and his movements were too smooth. No matter how the other 21 people on the field passed the ball, they could not escape the clutches of this great demon king. Ryuto would catch up and intercept the ball. 2-0, 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 36-0. Before the end of the half, the scoreboard had already shown such a score that did not look like a football game at all. It looked like a funny football movie. When the referee finally blew the whistle for the halftime break, everyone on the field except for Ryuto showed a relieved expression because they did not want to stand on the same football field with this animal anymore. And after a few minutes of rest, The players did not continue the second half of the game because all the players of Turi Second High School had all kinds of serious physical symptoms, so they could not continue the game and chose to forfeit. For this situation, almost all the spectators expressed full understanding. Because in the face of a monster who could directly shoot and shoot no matter where he stood, any normal person's first reaction would be to turn around and run. Even in addition to Turi Second High School, the football departments of the other 3 high schools also rushed to submit a waiver application after seeing this game. They looked anxious as if they would be publicly executed if they submitted it late. In this way, the football department of Turi First High School, where Ryuto was in, only took 45 minutes to win the Tokyo Metropolitan Sports Festival. It could be said that it was unprecedentedly fast. That was not football at all. The place where that man was should not be where a football player should be. Many years later, Space Wing, who had become a professional player and successfully won the UEFA European Championship, once recalled this, and when he mentioned that incident, there was always a wry smile mixed with complicated emotions on his face. Of course, this kind of painful memory did not only appear in Space Wing, who was a football player. After the football game, Ryuto went to the small stadium next to him without stopping to play the tennis game. When they saw Ryuto pick up the tennis racket, most of the players who participated in the game also chose to forfeit very wisely. Obviously, they did not want to compete one-on-one with such a monster. Except for the tennis prince of Turi Third High School. Go all out, let me see what you're good at. Just when Ryuto and the arrogant kid with a sun hat stood on the tennis court and looked at each other across the net, the latter said to him in an arrogant tone. It was just that when it came to arrogance, no one in the world could be more arrogant than Ryuto, except perhaps I am. Boom! The tennis racket in Ryuto's hand swung forward violently. As if the tennis ball was burning with raging flames, it directly pierced through the opponent's racket. It pierced a big hole in the net made of nylon thread. What the hell is this? Is he really playing tennis? Looking at the racket in his hand with a big hole in it, the kid in the sun hat was stunned for a moment. Although he also immediately chose to change his tennis racket to play again, every time Ryuto played a ball, it would still be accompanied by a tennis racket on the spot, and this ball could not be caught at all. So after 20 tennis rackets were pierced through, the tennis prince finally lost because he had no rackets to use. Ryuto successfully won his second championship. This bastard, is he really human? When Ryuto won 2 championships in a row, the principals of the other schools in the VIP stands were pale with fright on one hand, but on the other hand, they were slightly relieved. After all, according to the rules of Tokyo Metropolitan Festival, each student can only participate in 2 events at the same time. Ryuto has now won 2 championships, so the rest of the game has nothing to do with him. Finally, it can be carried out normally. What the hell? The kendo competition is about to begin. All participating students, Ryuto Kiryo number 2, please go to the kendo hall. I repeat, please go to the kendo hall. Ryuto Kiryo number 2, please go to the kendo hall. Puff. When they heard the name Ryuto Kiryo number 2 from the broadcast, the principals couldn't help but spit on the spot. Wait. Adolphe. Isn't each student only allowed to sign up for 2 competitions? Is there? I don't remember such a thing. Facing the accusations of several principals, Adolphe leisurely picked up the red wine glass. At this time, a principal picked up the list of rules of this year's Tokyo Metropolitan Festival and said to Adolphe righteously, "It's clearly written here. The same student. Name? What the hell? When was the word name added?" When they saw the word name suddenly added on the list of rules, the principals next to them were suddenly stunned. The same student can participate in at most 2 competitions, and the same student name can participate in at most 2 competitions, which is obviously a different concept. It's written right, a name can only participate in 2 competitions, so Ryuto Kuan ran to change his registration name after the second competition, so he can continue to participate in other competitions. You're obviously acting shamelessly here. Damn it. We are going to complain to the sports committee. Go quickly by the way, because Ryuto is willing to participate in the competition, the ratings and popularity of this year's Tokyo Metropolitan Festival soared, and the sports committee is happily drinking and celebrating. Speaking of this, Adolphe smiled and raised the red wine glass, with an old rogue attitude of, "Go and complain, if the complaint is successful, it's my loss." Bang! At the same time, the competition in the kendo hall has quickly come to an end. With the referee's order, the kendo genius Yagyu from Dori 5th High School fell to the ground with a thud, holding a broken bamboo blade in his hand. As for how the bamboo blade was broken, naturally, it was completely cut off by Ryuto. And the remaining force of the blade also shattered the protective gear on Yagyu's head, and finally the kendo genius was knocked out on the spot. This is definitely not a kendo competition. Absolutely not. Watching Yagyu being carried out on a stretcher, the trembling referee couldn't help but think. Chapter 248. For the players who participated in this Tokyo Grand Cultural Festival, this sports meet was definitely a nightmare in their sports career. One day. In just one day's time, the 6 competitions that Dragon Fight had participated in had all ended, and without exception, he had won all of them by a large margin. According to the records, Ryuto's record was as follows. In the football competition, he scored 36 goals in the first half, and the opponents collectively forfeited in the second half. In the tennis competition, he broke 20 of the opponents' rackets, forcing the opponents to admit defeat. In the kendo competition, he broke the opponent's bamboo blade with one strike, and then knocked the opponent unconscious with his protective gear. In the baseball competition, he hit 28 home runs in a row, and all the backup baseballs were hit out of the field. In the table tennis competition, he smashed the table tennis ball into pieces every time he served and received the ball, leaving the opponent with no ball to catch. In the basketball game, the entire game ended with a total of 89 points, 51 rebounds, 46 blocks, and 31 steals, as well as a basket breaker. How should it be described? From the moment Ryuto appeared on the field, the nature of these games had changed, and they had become some kind of strange game from another dimension. In the beginning, when Ryuto alone defeated the entire opposing team in the football competition, the audience was so surprised that their eyes almost popped out. But after the tennis, kendo, baseball, and other games began one by one, the audience realized that this guy was not here to play at all, but to play with mud. All the high school level athletes, even the talented geniuses, were like children in front of Ryuto, and the game quickly turned into a one-sided situation. Really, what's so good about this game? It's like coaxing children. In the afternoon, after the first day of the Tokyo Grand Cultural Festival ended, Colored Glaze, who walked out of the stadium with the crowd, couldn't help but complain. Watching Ryuto show off his prowess in various venues, Colored Glaze suddenly wondered if his brain was damaged. You're a leader of Kyoto, a martial artist who has experienced life and death situations, but you actually went to a high school sports meet to bully children? What kind of scandal is this? What's the purpose? No matter how much he won, he wouldn't show his face. It would only give people the impression that he was bullying a child. Don't say that. If Ryuto can participate in this kind of competition, it means that his mentality has changed a lot. If it was in the past, he wouldn't do something that doesn't benefit him. At this time, Yoon Yen, who was walking next to him, smiled. Obviously, after spending some time together, Yoon Yen understood Ryuto very well. In Yoon Yen's words, Ryuto was the kind of guy who wouldn't wake up early if there were no benefits. He wouldn't do anything that didn't benefit him, let alone something as troublesome as participating in 6 sports events in a row. However, the moment she heard the word benefits, Dunia, who was silently following the two of them, suddenly trembled all over. Dunia, do you feel cold? No. I think I saw you shivering. Are you sure you're okay? No problem, I'm just a little tired. Dunia reluctantly squeezed out a smile from her mouth, but her heart was in a state of chaos. Are you kidding me? Is there any justice? Is there any law? What's wrong with Ryuto? He actually won the championship of all 6 events in one go. In this case, does this mean I have to accompany him, to sleep with him? Thinking of this, Dunia's face couldn't help but blush. Speaking of which, Dunia was actually a girl who had very little knowledge in the relationship between men and women. It was just like when she stayed in the safe house with Long Do. She didn't even know what the long, round, and plastic condoms that could be put on special places to play billiards were. And for the specific things between men and women, Dunia was even more confused. She didn't know how big of a problem there would be. It was just that the girl's natural shyness and the last trace of Miss Sato's reservedness still made her feel that Ryuto's hug-to-sleep request was very strange. How to put it, Dunia didn't resist Ryuto's approach, but she felt that this kind of action was too intimate, and she always felt very embarrassed. But since the two of them have finished the bet, and Ryuto won the bet beautifully, then now Dunia has no way back? How about I just run away? Take a few days off to go back to my hometown to see my mom? He should forget about this after a few days, right? At this moment, in order to escape reality, Dunia couldn't help but think of some evil ideas. But before she decided how many days to run away, the combination of the three beauties had already met Ryuto, who had been waiting here for a long time at the entrance of the stadium. Yo, it's still early. Do you want to go eat something together? After seeing his wives, Ryuto smiled and greeted them, and he invited them to go out and play. During this time, the relationship between the three of them has improved a lot, and they also go out with Ryuto from time to time, so this was actually a very normal thing. But after hearing this invitation, the hair on Dong Nia's head stood on end. Not today, there are still things to deal with in the alliance. Do you think I'm as free as you? Sorry, I also have something to do, so I can't accompany you today. What's more, Colored Glaze and Yun Yen both had something to do today, so they waved their hands and got into their cars, leaving only Ryuto and Dunia here. I also suddenly remembered that I have something to do, then What are you talking about? You clearly said this morning that you were very free recently, right? Let's go, there's a new milk tea shop, I heard it's very good, let's try it together. Before Dunia finished speaking, Ryuto had already pulled her into Narukai's car. The speed was so fast that it was almost like a kidnapping. It's over. It's over this time, he must be planning to kidnap me directly, and then... When she thought of the terrible treatment she might face tonight, Dunia felt her hands and feet were cold, and her whole body trembled. Perhaps because he won the competition and spent the sweat of his youth, Ryuto was obviously in a good mood now. He pulled Dunia into the nearby gourmet street, and ate all the way from the end of the street to the end of the street, and then from the end of the street back to the end of the street. When he went back, he also packed a lot of food as a midnight snack, looking like a macho man who was not afraid of exceeding the calorie limit. But during this process, Dunia had been eating silently, and she was not in the mood to talk at all, as if she was mourning for her tragic experience in a while. However, the sky was dark. After the two had enough fun, the black car quietly stopped at the main entrance of the Saito Club headquarters. This is... Looking at the familiar scenery, Dunia couldn't help but be stunned. Isn't this my home? Why did he bring me back to his home? Dunia thought that Ryuto would pack her home after eating and throw her on the bed as a pillow. Although Dunia was really unwilling, this was the bet that the person who won the competition should get after all. She had nothing to say, so she could only acquiesce to this kind of thing. But Ryuto looked at her stunned face and asked with a smile, "Miss? You haven't played enough, right? Let's go home." Go home? Aren't you taking me back to the Rulong Group headquarters? It's already night, why should I take you back? It's that, the bet. Speaking of this, Dunia blushed a little, but she felt that she still had to make this matter clear. Bet. That thing. Ryuto suddenly felt a little dumbfounded when he heard the words, so he directly hugged Dunia in the car and let them lie together in the spacious back seat. Yeah, you are. When she was in Ryuto's arms, Dunia couldn't help but scream. Narukai in the front had already skillfully put on the soundproof headphones and eye mask, and pulled down the partition between the front seat and the back seat, so as not to disturb the boss's mood. Who knew that after lying down, Ryuto just reached out and patted her little head, and said somewhat dotingly, "Snore? Okay, wake up, the bet is over. Now can you go home in peace?" Hey. That's it. That's it? Suddenly, the bet that gave Dunia a headache for an afternoon was over, and it ended in such an easy way, which she never expected. Of course, although Dunia has always been very concerned about the bet, in Ryuto's view, this was actually more of a joke than a serious bet. He just didn't agree with Dunia's statement that he couldn't win all the championships, so he personally proved to her that he was an omnipotent Superman. As for the matter of sleeping with Dunia for a night, Ryuto originally proposed the bet to dissuade the white-haired man. Even if he won, he couldn't really ask her to sleep with him for a night. Then he would have to call the police. After hugging and sleeping, Ryuto sat up with the girl in his arms, opened the door and said to her, "Good girl, let's go back, see you tomorrow morning." After sitting up in a daze, Dunia looked at Ryuto's face without saying a word, with a thoughtful expression. "What's wrong? Is there anything that makes you unhappy? Come, I will send you back first." Although he didn't know what Dunia was thinking, Ryuto still took the lead to step out of the car, ready to pick up the girl outside and throw her back to the Sai-2 Guild Hall. But just at the moment when Ryuto was about to get out of the car, a seemingly white and slender hand, but containing a powerful force, grabbed the corner of his clothes. "Dunia, you... please, take me to the original battle arena of the Sai River. I really want to go there. Is that okay?" The afterglow of the setting sun slowly shined through the car window. The girl reached out and pulled the man's clothes, and for the first time, pleaded with a soft voice. Chapter 249. As everyone knew, Dunia was a loli. But at the same time, Dunia wasn't a soft loli. Although she looked cute, her heart was actually a little bear that drank vodka in the snow. Therefore, after knowing her for so long, this was the first time Long Do saw Dunia begging for help in such a soft and coquettish manner. It was an eye-opener. It had to be said that the scene of such a cute little loli pulling on your clothes was really quite lethal. Ryuto couldn't help but want to pat her head. But although she was cute, the words coming out of her mouth weren't cute at all. A normal loli would say, "I beg you, take me to the doll store to catch dolls, I really want to go, okay?" But Dunia said, "I beg you, take me to the arena where people die every day, I really want to go, okay?" Okay, my ass, was this even a concept? Thus, Ryuto could only smile bitterly and say, "You're saying this again, I already said that place isn't suitable for you. I know, it's a place where a bunch of despicable people stay, and it's also very dangerous, but I still want to go." Actually, Dunia's place where a bunch of despicable people stay seemed to have included Ryuto as well. But now wasn't the time to care about this. It's very dangerous to fight in the arena there. You could die at any time. If I die there, it means that I'm only at that level. Is this some kind of hot-blooded anime protagonist speech? This kind of speech doesn't suit you at all. It's not hot-blooded speech, I just don't want. I don't want to be protected by you anymore, I don't want to be far behind you anymore. At this point, Dunia's tone revealed a firm conviction. If you asked the current Dunia whether she liked Ryuto or not, she would definitely shake her head and deny it, because a boorish bear like her wouldn't think about such complicated things. However, if she was asked whether she wanted to stay with Ryuto forever, she would definitely nod her head in affirmation, because this was something that did not require much thought. In fact, ever since Dunia was rescued by Ryuto from the Tokyo Emperor Hotel a few months ago, she had experienced a 12-hour chase and her father's near-death tragedy. Dunia had always been chasing after the strength in her heart. She wanted to be strong enough to protect her loved ones, to stand on the front lines with Ryuto, and to fight alongside him. Because of this firm belief, the girl's strength had improved by leaps and bounds during this period of time. But it wasn't enough, it was far from enough. By now, Dunia already possessed the basic eyesight of a martial artist. Therefore, from the Tokyo Great Body Raising Festival that had just ended, she could completely determine how exaggerated Ryuto's current strength was. Even if it was just some football, basketball, or kendo movements, that kind of inhuman speed, strength, technique, and absolute control of the body was something that Dunia could not compare with at the current stage. Obviously, in these few months, although Dunia had become stronger, Ryuto had also become stronger. This can't go on. This can't go on, I will only be left further and further behind by him. Just when Ryuto was about to get off the car, Dunya seemed to have an illusion that this man would be further and further away from her, further and further away. Without a doubt, Ryuto's attitude towards Dunya had always been rough on the surface, unrestrained on the surface, but was actually very gentle on the inside. Whenever Dunya's mouth was dirty from eating, Ryuto would disdain it while wiping it clean with a tissue. Whenever Dunya cultivated until she was too tired to move, Ryuto would laugh while carrying her to take a shower and rest. Whenever Dunya willfully made all kinds of requests, Ryuto would also try his best to satisfy her on non-principled issues. During this period of time, the little interactions between the two had already made Dunya used to having such a person around her. When she thought that he might leave her further and further behind in the future, the girl felt a strong sense of uneasiness in her heart. No, this kind of thing. Definitely not. After feeling the girl's rock-solid conviction, Ryuto could not help but sigh. What a headache, it seems like this little bear wants to go against me, and must climb a mountain of swords and jump into a pot of boiling oil. Seeing that it was not so easy to persuade Dunya, Ryuto could only use his killing move. So he reached out and held Dunya's small and slender hand, and said to her seriously, "Dunya, actually?" When feeling Ryuto's serious attitude, Dunya's eyes blinked as she seemed to have sensed that things had taken a turn for the better. Who knew, Ryuto's next sentence made her jump up in fright. "In the back seat of the car," Ryuto said seriously, "actually, I like you, and I really want to marry you." Dong! The moment she heard this, Dunya's butt bounced up as if it was installed with a spring, and her head directly hit the roof of the car. The movement caused by this soaring into the sky was so big that even Narrate, who was wearing soundproof earplugs and an eye mask, could clearly feel it. Whoa whoa whoa! Is this the legendary car shake? The shaking was so strong, it was as if the car was shaking. Boss is mighty. Suddenly, Narrate, who was sitting in the front, unconsciously clapped and paid the highest respect to his boss. Just when Narrate unconsciously clapped, Dunya covered her forehead and roared. You. What the hell are you talking about? I'm seriously discussing with you now. But you suddenly did this. Are you perfunctory with me? I'm not perfunctory with you, I've always liked you, it's the kind of like between a man and a woman. When Ryuto shook his head and said it again, Dunya's face suddenly turned red. After all, she had never experienced such a scene in her life. The most exaggerated thing was that Ryuto also held Dunya's small hand, and said in a serious, but very strange tone, "It's because I like you that I don't want to involve you in those wars, understand?" Then. In the face of such a sudden confession, Dong Nia didn't know how to react for a while. Different from the experienced Yun Yen, who often gave people the good guy card, and the resourceful and precocious colored glaze, Dunya was only a child of 200 to 300 pounds. Even if it was a tomboyish girl with a rough personality, she would be surprised and shy when being confessed to. Dunya was no exception. After being shy for a few seconds, the girl shyly turned her head and asked embarrassedly, "Do you mean you want me to be your girlfriend?" "It's not that." No, how is that possible?" But just when Dunya was about to shyly agree, Ryuto shook his head without hesitation, indicating that he had no such intention. What is this? This sudden reply shocked Dunya. Normally, when a guy confesses to a girl, doesn't that mean he wants her to be his girlfriend? Why did Ryuto immediately shake his head after confessing? Was it you who confessed? Was it you who gave people the good guy card? You did everything, why are you so arrogant? Seeing Dunya's stunned expression, Ryuto said confidently, "You're only 15, although you're already a loli, you're still not old enough to be my girlfriend, so this kind of thing is still too early for you." Are you *king kidding me? Hearing these righteous words, Dunya clenched her teeth, and angrily said, "You just said you want to marry me. How can you deny it so quickly? Are you still human? You have to wait until you're 16, otherwise it's illegal. We can't do illegal things." Suddenly, Ryuto straightened his back and put on the appearance of a model student, while shamelessly saying, "But in fact, This was indeed the case. In today's Japan, the age of marriage according to civil law was 18 for men and 16 for women. But because they were underage, they still needed the consent of their parents or guardians to get a marriage license. But in any case, a 16-year-old girl could already marry and have children, so Yunyen and colored glaze were already marriageable women. On this basis, Ryuto could be assured to date them, and even make them pregnant. This was all reasonable and legal, and he would not be dragged to jail. But among them, only Dunya was not a woman of suitable age, and she was still 3 months away from her 16th birthday. Therefore, in these 3 months, Ryuto would not date Dunya. At most, he would confess to her to avoid being called 110 and sent to the police station to eat pork chop rice. Of course, Ryuto's wonderful view of love was simply an eye-opener for Dunya. Especially after being called an expired loli, her snow-white face suddenly darkened visibly. Who's an expired loli, bastard? I'm still in my freshness period. But although Dunya was a little angry, at least she knew an important piece of information, and that was that Ryuto did indeed like her. Since she knew that Ryuto liked her, the next thing to do was simple. Although Dunya's brain was not very good, she benefited from her experience of pretending to be a rich lady since she was a child. Her acting skills were also first class. Therefore, Dunya slightly lowered her head, and when she raised her head again, there were tears in her eyes. Seeing that the little loli was crying, Long Do hurriedly asked nervously, You're crying just like that? No way. Sob sob, I'm about to get married. If you still treat me like a child, you're too much. Sob. While pretending to cry, Dunya took advantage of the situation and threw herself into Ryuto's arms like a white bear. There was a strange soft and heavy touch in his arms. His nose was filled with a strange mixture of vodka and cream on the girl's body. At the same time, he could feel the little head crying in his arms. This feeling, for a lolicon, was a killer move. Although Ryuto was not a lolicon, for him, it was still a killer move. Therefore, from a certain perspective, it didn't matter whether he was a lolicon or not, the key was whether the loli was cute enough. So in the end, Ryuto still lost to Dunya's crying and tantrums. He obediently took her to the Sai River fighting arena. Chapter 250. In Tokyo's underground world, there was a legendary place that only a few people knew about, Sai no Hara. According to the rumors, this was the underground world's heaven, a materialistic demon's den, and also the burial place of many people. And the master of this underground world, Sai no Hara merchant, was a man wrapped in mystery, but his hands were all over the sky. Torio-sama, welcome back. When Ryuto brought Dunya to the abandoned station leading to Sai no Hara, the group of gatekeepers at the station entrance bowed to Ryuto, showing a very respectful look. Well, is the florist here? The boss is here. You can go and find him at any time. At the entrance of the abandoned station, a gatekeeper opened the side secret door, exposing the inconspicuous small elevator to Ryuto and Dunya. Because Ryuto was now an A-class fighter of Sai no Hara Arena, coupled with his special identity as Tokyo's extreme dojo master, he naturally enjoyed a lot of privileges in this underground area, such as this elevator that led to the boss at any time. After entering the elevator, Dunya couldn't help but ask, the boss of Sai no Hara, what kind of person is he? He is a greasy uncle with a big belly, but that guy has a lot of eyes and ears, almost everywhere in Tokyo. Eyes and ears? Is he an informant? That's right, almost half of the homeless people in Tokyo have contact with that fat uncle, so basically there is nothing that he doesn't know. Rumble. At this point, the elevator stopped moving. As the door opened, what appeared in front of Dunya was a long underground passage. The two of them walked to the end of the underground tunnel. The floor in front of them suddenly rose up. A fat uncle sat on a computer table. He was wearing a jacket with the word Sparrow printed on it and 2 large gold chains hanging in front of his chest. At first glance, one could tell that he was not a decent person. Ryuto-kun, calling me a greasy uncle with a big belly in front of this cute little lady, isn't this a bit too much? After rising from the underground mechanism that resembled an elevator, the florist of the Sai River Plain couldn't help but twitch his mouth, revealing an unhappy expression. Ha ha ha, sorry. Ryuto smiled when he heard the florist's complaint. Then, he immediately asked, by the way, can the battle arena arrange for Class C matches? This cute little lady wants to fight. Of course. In the past few months, the eldest daughter of the Sai-2 family, who has been challenging all the dojos in Tokyo, wants to fight. Naturally, we are more than happy to do so. Although Long Do didn't introduce Dunya at all, the florist seemed to already know all the information about this girl and immediately pressed a button on the table. The call was connected, and a well-mannered voice came from the other side. Lord Hua Shang, what can I do for you? Assign Dunya Sai-2 to the C-rank team and arrange a match for her immediately. As for her opponent, how's Park In-young? Didn't that guy come back to compete recently? You really don't hold back. You actually interfered with the selection of the match as a contestant. Forget it, anyway, I have something to discuss with you. Generally speaking, even if Ryuto's identity was special, he shouldn't interfere with the selection of the battle arena. However, the florist still gave him face and arranged the Thai Tiger as Dunya's first opponent. Park In-young was obviously a Korean, so why was he called the Thai Tiger? This was related to the shocking match between him and Ryuto a few months ago. During the match, Ryuto punched Park In-young's vital point. Well, it was a direct hit to his balls. Ever since his balls were smashed by that punch, Pu Ren-young decided to have his balls removed. After that, other than his throat becoming sharper and his beard not growing any longer, he felt very good everywhere else. As for why Ryuto chose Park In-young as Dunya's first opponent, it was mainly because that guy's fighting style was more orthodox and not so dirty. It was more suitable for her to practice and adapt to the atmosphere of the Iron Cage battle. However, when she heard the florist and Ryuto arrange her match in just a few words, Dunya was a little surprised and asked, Can we start already? No need for any preparation. Miss, where do you think this is? Hearing Dunya's naive words, the florist smiled and said, This is the Sai-no-hara battle arena. No one here will refuse to fight because everyone is here for this. Aren't you the same? Yes, it's my problem. If you want to fight, then let's fight. There's no need to prepare at all. That's right. Young lady, you're very bold. You'll like it here. As the florist nodded, the three of them took the elevator to the battle arena area. When Dunya followed Ryuto and the florist into the dome building that wasn't particularly big, but the atmosphere was much more lively than outside, she was instantly excited. As long as one was a martial artist, the moment they entered the Sai-no-hara battle arena, they would be able to feel the thick fighting atmosphere around them. This was a field that was about half the size of a football field. In the middle of the field, there was an iron cage that was about 10 meters in diameter. Inside it, there were two contestants fighting with their lives on the line. Around the iron cage, there were spectator stands arranged in a circle like a football field. Hundreds of men and women were cheering and shouting for the bloody battle inside the iron cage. It was as if they had returned to the Colosseum of ancient Greece. Amazing. There are so many people here every day. Well, there aren't many people today because there aren't any heavyweight matches. Suddenly, the florist glanced at Dunya and smiled, but there will definitely be more people in a while because a cute and powerful new fighter has appeared. Ha ha ha. Before the florist finished speaking, the fierce battle in the iron cage finally came to an end. The middle-aged man in a judo suit seized an opportunity to entangle the opponent's leg. With a roll, he dragged the opponent to the ground and broke the guy's knee. Accompanied by a scream, the serious injury of the knee ligament and patella fracture instantly killed the match. When the opponent clutched his knees and screamed, the jiu-jitsu fighter immediately wrapped his neck around the opponent's neck and strangled him like a python, causing him to faint. Oh, is that judo? But it seems different from what I've seen before. Seeing the iron cage slowly rise and the man in a judo suit began to receive the cheers of the audience, Dunya couldn't help but ask. That's not judo, it's Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Judo techniques are more inclined towards throwing, while Gracie Jiu-Jitsu is more inclined towards ground techniques, joint techniques, and strangulation techniques. I see. What's the level of that fighter? His name is Gyuj, a black belt in Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. In the Coliseum, he belongs to the B-class group. His strength is not bad. In fact, Gyuj had won more than 100 times in the mixed martial arts competitions on the ground. He also had an excellent record of 7 wins in the underground competitions. But in the florist's eyes, this master's strength was only a... After all, he had seen too many strong masters, and there were many monsters that were beyond the knowledge of ordinary people. For example, Ryuto, who was standing next to him. Now, Ryuto's total record in the Coliseum was 23 consecutive victories, from C-class to B-class to A-class. So far, he had never tasted defeat. Most of the matches were victories, which was simply amazing. However, this was to be expected. Currently, Long Do was much stronger than he had been 2 months ago, when he had killed the Access Dao Realm expert. Access Dao Realm experts were already considered top-tier experts in this world. It was difficult to find someone stronger than Access Dao Realm experts. However, just as the florist and Dunya were explaining and chatting, the winner of the match, Gyuj, who was just about to walk down from the iron cage, suddenly saw the scene here. That's A-class fighter, Ryuto Kiryu? After seeing the young man standing next to the florist, Gyuj's eyes suddenly burst out a burst of light. Just like the Tiger of Thailand Park In-young that Ryuto fought before, Gyuj was also a Dao Seeker contestant. His main goal was not to earn money, but to challenge his own limits to fight here. So when he saw the current undefeated legend of the Colosseum, he immediately walked over and attracted the attention of most of the audience to Ryuto. Isn't that Boss Tong Sheng? Boss doesn't have a match today. Why is he here? Is he here with Boss to watch the match? Who is that little girl beside him? She looks so cute. Is she Boss's little wife? In view of Ryuto's current fame and reputation in the underground world, most of the people in the Sai River Plain would respectfully call him Boss, while the florist would call him Boss. And when the B-class fighter Gyuj, who just won the match, walked over, most of the audience's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. They seemed to have thought of what Gyuj was going to do. Ryuto Kiryu, fight with me. At this moment, Gyuj did not disappoint and walked in front of Ryuto and issued a face-to-face challenge. Of course, this kind of challenge was considered an unofficial match. The person being challenged could accept or not. But when faced with this kind of situation, most fighters would not be a coward. So when they saw Gyuj, who just won the match to his heart's content, challenged Ryuto, the audience roared loudly. Fight! Fight! I can see Boss Tong Shang's battle again. My luck is great today. Hey! Come over quickly. Boss Tong Sheng, prepare for the match. For a moment, the entire Colosseum was in an uproar. After all, this was a dragon of extreme competition. Naturally, people would be very excited. After being challenged, Ryuto also smiled and replied, "You want to challenge me? Of course, no problem." Very good. Then let's go up now. But before you challenge me, you'll have to get past her first. What? Under everyone's stunned gaze, Ryuto gently pushed Dunya from behind and pushed this little loli in front of him. Chapter 251. Is there something wrong with my eyes? When Ryuto pushed Dunya in front of him, most of the audience could not help but rub their eyes as if they were hallucinating. How is this possible? The B-class fighter, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu expert Gugger, had challenged Ryuto, but the extreme Dao master had pushed the little loli next to him out? Is he crazy? What the hell is this? If Ryuto had pushed out a burly man or a powerhouse who looked fierce, everyone could still understand his actions. But this little loli with long white hair, is she really not here to be a cheerleader? Although there was no lack of petite fighters in the battle arena of the River of Sai, this kind of loli-type fighter seemed to have never appeared before. Therefore, after realizing what Ryuto had said, Gugger's face lit up with anger. He frowned and said, "Are you insulting me? You want me to fight against a little girl? Based on—" Perhaps because he was too angry, Gugger could not help but point at Dunia as he spoke. However, it was this finger that made this B-class fighter lose the chance to fight against Ryuto. Although Dunia was obedient in front of Ryuto, she was a northern bear with a bad temper. How could she tolerate strangers pointing at her in front of her? Just as Gugger pointed at Dunia, she tilted her body slightly and took a step forward. In the next second, she appeared 3 meters away. She was so fast that Ryuto almost could not react in time. Then, the girl stepped forward and threw out her palm. Her slender palm pressed down with a strong force that broke through the air and pressed against Gugger's abdomen. At that moment, Gugger felt as if his abdomen had been hit by a heavy hammer. His body unconsciously bent forward like a cooked shrimp, and his head fell naturally. Go to hell. After the disdainful expression on his face fell, Dunia flipped her right palm up in a continuous movement. She closed her 5 fingers together and bent her palm slightly, clasping it against Gugger's chin. At the same time, she stomped her right foot on the ground. When her palm clasped upward, power rose from the bottom of the girl's feet and flowed through her body. It then flowed through her slender palm to Gugger's chin. Saito Ryu Palea Martial Art. Baron Lightning Hand. After she clasped her palm, Gugger's body rose up in front of everyone's dumbfounded eyes as if he had jumped high on the ground. He rose more than 2 meters in the air. A sharp-eyed person would even be able to tell that Gyuge's eyes had already lost focus and his body had stiffened when he was blasted into the air. He had lost consciousness on the spot. Thump. When his burly figure fell to the ground in an extremely unsightly posture, the crowd finally realized what had happened. Am I? This little loli actually sent Gugger flying with a single palm and knocked him unconscious? Dunia's smooth series of moves was extremely stunning. Even the flower merchant at the side couldn't help but clap his hands. Beautiful. As expected of the successor of the Saito Ryu Palea martial arts. Although she wasn't a master, she was already quite skilled. As an information broker who sold information, the flower merchant naturally knew how the Saito Ryu Guild Hall started, and what kind of martial arts system that clan was most proficient in. On the surface, the Saito Ryu Guild Hall seemed to be an all-inclusive mixed martial arts hall. In the gymnasium, whether it was the modern martial arts, such as karate, judo, kickboxing, kendo, aikido or aikido, or the ancient martial arts, such as the art of war, the art of war, the art of war, the art of water, the art of bone, the art of spear, and the art of jiu-jitsu, they all had a deep understanding of them. However, these were only martial arts that were taught to ordinary students. The core, Saito Ryu Palea martial arts, was the highest mystery that only the direct descendants of the clan could learn. According to the flower merchant's knowledge, the essence of the Saito Ryu Palea martial arts was a set of ancient martial arts system that was built with the bone arts as the core. The so-called bone technique was said to be a martial skill that had been passed down for more than 1,000 years. It was known as the country's oldest fist technique. However, compared to martial skills, this might be more inclined towards a kind of concept, a concept that allowed one's body to be used in various flexible ways. Just like the ground shrinking technique that Dunia used to quickly get close to others and move as if she was gliding, it was the core of the bone arts. This kind of footwork was extremely fast, and it was extremely subtle when adjusting the center of gravity. It would give people the illusion that the ground was shortened, hence the name. It was said that after the earliest Saito Ryu master learned the bone arts, he added in the essence of many other martial arts schools. This slowly formed the current Saito Ryu Palea martial arts. The strength of the system was not inferior to Ryuto's Furamaki-style martial arts. When Dunia finished off Gyuge with one palm, the huge battle arena suddenly became silent. After all, everyone was shocked by this cute little loli. They could not imagine that her slender body actually contained such powerful strength and superb technique. Ignorant bastard! You think you can fight Long Do on your own? You are still a few hundred years away. Looking at the guy that fell on the ground, Dunia slowly raised her left hand and made a friendly middle finger gesture. It was not that Dunya looked down on her opponent, but her opponent looked down on her first. Serves him right, humph. But after Gyuj was directly put on the ground, this sudden challenge naturally came to an end. Next, it was Dunya's turn to officially fight. Ladies and gentlemen, the next battle will be between the newcomer of the C-Class group, Silver Violent Bear, Sai-Tu Dunya against Thai Tiger, Park In-young. Please stay in your seats, the battle will start soon. However, when the host announced the name of the little lowly, the audience suddenly had a feeling of realization. So that's how it is, she is the daughter of Sai-Tu Takahiro. No wonder she dares to come here at such a young age. She must be from a martial arts family. That's for sure. How can a woman that can catch the eyes of Boss Tong be an ordinary person? But Boss Taste is a bit too immature. Will he be arrested by the police? For a time, the audience in the arena began a heated discussion about the newcomer, Dunya. But from their words, they no longer dared to look down on her. What a joke! The B-class fighter Gyuj was already carried out on a stretcher. To be able to put down the B-class fighter in one go, Dunya's strength was already beyond doubt. Who would dare to look down on her? Looking for death. But just when everyone's attention was focused on the cage, the flower merchant sitting in the audience seats discussed other things with Ryuto. You just said you have something to discuss with me. Is it something that even you can't solve? When Ryuto took the wine glass from the flower merchant, he gently took a sip of the aged wine and then asked with a smile. As the boss of the Sai River Plain, although on the surface he was just an information broker, he was also considered a big shot in the underground world. There were not many things that he could not solve by himself. Indeed there is. Have you seen this thing before? This fat and greasy-looking man nodded and took out an unremarkable piece of paper from his pocket. It was a piece of paper that was only as thick as a finger. It looked like it was made by folding a piece of paper together. It could even be called a child's toy. This is... But when Ryuto took the piece of paper, he slightly frowned because he already smelled the strange smell from the paper. It was the disgusting smell of paper anesthetic, mixed with greed. Paper anesthetic, Rue Hui had mentioned this thing to Ryuto before. It was a contraband product made by soaking paper in anesthetic and letting the anesthetic be absorbed by the paper before drying it. In the headquarters of Psychedelic Saburo, which had been destroyed by Long Do and his men, there were all kinds of anesthetics, and he had seen the most powerful one, which was called Hell Butterfly. Although it had been a while, Ryuto could still clearly remember the terrifying changes that happened to Pangasutra after consuming the Hell Butterfly. It could be described as, I don't want to be a human anymore. But at this time, why did the flower merchant take out a piece of paper anesthetic? You usually don't touch this kind of thing. Where did this thing come from? In fact, after the psychedelic Saburo was destroyed by you, this kind of lousy stuff has become very difficult to buy. But in the past few days, this kind of special paper anesthetic has appeared in the underground market. After taking it, the body will be greatly strengthened. What? Hearing the flower merchant's words, Ryuto's mind flashed back to Pangasutra's red and swollen face, as well as his crazily inflated muscles. Speaking of which, the previous Hell Butterfly was a unique product that the Saburo brothers accidentally bought from someone else. It wasn't a product that they produced. Therefore, the origin of the Hell Butterfly was still unknown. According to Rue Hui's speculation, the Hell Butterfly might be related to the Heavenly Eye Group's pharmaceutical department. But speculation was just speculation. At least until now, there was no direct evidence pointing to that group of people. And after a few months, Ryuto gradually forgot about this matter. But he didn't expect to see something similar in the arena today. The scariest thing was that according to the flower merchant, this thing had actually started to circulate in the underground world. Doesn't this mean... You should understand right, Ryuto-kun. The flower merchant slowly took out a cigar and lit it up. After taking a deep breath, he said seriously, if this thing were to circulate in large quantities, it would only cause chaos in the world. It might even spread to the surface world. I can't allow this to happen. Speaking until here, the boss of the Sai River Plain underground world couldn't help but coldly snort. His words were filled with biting, cold-killing intent. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.